Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the Nika Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What if Deku had quirk creation power? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Izuku Midoriya had a strange childhood to say the least. Although one would expect to feel that way after losing his best friend in the blink of an eye. Whilst he had received general indifference from his peers over his quirk, or to some, his lack thereof, it still gave him a sense of emptiness. When young Izuku turned 4 years old, his quirk was meant to have come in already and he'd be on the fast track to becoming a pro hero like his idol All Might. This however, did not happen. It was January and the 4.5-year-old went with his mother Inko Midoriya to their local doctor's office to get him tested for whether or not he contained a quirk factor after his mother got worried at the lack of a quirk emerging. After running multiple tests, it does seem your son contains a quirk factor and should either develop a quirk or have already developed a quirk, the doctor says as he twiddles around in his chair before turning to look at the mother-son duo. The weird part however, is that we cannot identify what exactly the kid's quirk even is. The Midoriya family stare at the doctor with a look that expresses a combination of confusion, intrigue, and excitement in the case of the younger Midoriya. What do you mean you can't identify my son's quirk? The elder Midoriya says, asking for clarification on the doctor's previous statement. It's as simple as that, ma'am. The quirk factor is most certainly there, however it is unlike anything we've ever seen before. If I may ask, what are your and your husband's quirks? The doctor asks as he picks up a manila folder and hands it to the Midoriya matriarch. Mrs. Midoriya takes the folder from the doctor and says, well, I can pull small objects towards me and my husband can breathe fire. The doctor simply nods at her before starting to list off his theories on this predicament. Well, Mrs. Midoriya, after hearing your and your husband's quirks, my main theory is that your son has what is officially called a Quirk Mutation. Inko Midoriya hears the term and motions for the doctor to continue. A Quirk Mutation is when a child's quirk is completely unrelated to either of their parents. Normally, his quirk would either be a stronger version of your and your husband's quirk, or a combination of the two such as a form of pyrokinesis. Your son exhibits neither of these traits despite 100% having a quirk factor, so your son's quirk is a mutation. Inko finishes reading the report as the doctor wraps up his theory. While the two adults continue having their conversation, little Izuku is looking on with a sense of amazement. I have a quirk? And it's a unique quirk mutation? So cool! The bush-haired boy thought to himself before calming down and thinking more rationally about it for a moment, or well, as rational as a 4-year-old can think. Wait, but the doctor says he doesn't know what my quirk is? Well, I'll just have to try and figure it out myself when I get home, then I can become a hero as great as All Might. As the 4-year-old finished that thought, his mom gave the doctor a small bow and a thank you before grabbing Izuku's hand and taking him out of the office to start the walk home. Well, Izuku, as shocking as the surprise of your quirk mutation was, we at least know you have a quirk in general. That calls for a celebration. How about I make you your favorite for dinner? His mother announces happily as Izuku cheers out for Katsudon. The next day, little Izuku excitedly heads out to Aldera preschool, thrilled to tell Kaken that he has a quirk. Kaken, I have a quirk, little Izuku yells to his best friend. The so-called Kaken hears that the person he's recently started calling Deku has a quirk and barks out, oh yeah? What is it? We both know it won't be nearly as good as mine. Bakugo finishes up his statement with a flash of his quirk. Katsuki Bakugo. Quirk, expulsion. Katsuki Bakugo has the ability to sweat nitroglycerin which can be used to cause a chemical reaction to create explosions. Little Izuku looked at Kaken with a smile on his face before saying, well, that's the thing, the doctor couldn't figure it out, says it is a quirk mutation where it's not related to either my mommy or daddy and it's so unlike anything they've ever seen that it has them confused. As little Izuku rattled off what he knew of his quirk, he failed to notice Kaken getting more and more angry until he finally snapped and launched an explosion at the other boy. You think you're better than me, Deku? Because you have a rare quirk? Well, rare or not, my quirk is way better than yours, now stay out of my way. Kaken screams out to little Izuku before walking away from his still recovering friend. After taking a minute to recover, Izuku managed to get himself up, albeit shakily, and walked to class before getting told by the teacher to get checked out by the nurse. While he was being patched up, only one thought went through his mind: why was Kaken acting so mean to me? 13-ish years later. A lot of time has passed for young Izuku since that fateful day occurred, and a lot has changed within that span of time. His father Hisashi had to move to the U.S. in order to provide for his family and caused a rift to form between his father and him. Whilst Hisashi still calls the mother and son once a month or so, It's never anything too deep and just simple, "How are you doing?" and "How's school?" Around the time young Izuku had entered Aldera Middle School, he had managed to convince his mom to let him start going to the local gym so he may start physical training for his future career. About 6 months later, Izuku also managed to convince Inko to allow him to start training in martial arts, specifically Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, at the local dojo run by Master Kendo. There at the dojo, Izuku met the one real friend he's had since Bakugo distanced himself from him, Itsuka Kendo. As the daughter of the master's dojo, she was often paired up with Izuku to help him catch up to the other students. After a few sessions she found him to be a pleasant person to hang with, so they started hanging out every now and then, albeit less often than they wished due to them attending different schools. After news spread of his rare Quirk mutation and its lack of activation, his fellow students' treatment of him varied from person to person. One person would try and SCK up to him, hoping to say they knew a future top hero, one person treats him with indifference, and the third type of person? Well, these were the type who falsely believed him to be quirkless and would bully him. Unfortunately, or fortunately depending on how you look at it, the first kind disappeared after his 3rd year of middle school, leaving him mostly alone at school. Throughout this passage of time however, only 2 things remained the same: Izuku had still not managed to unlock his quirk. Even after countless quirk counselors, at-home attempts, and everything in between, he has still not managed to unlock it. However, in spite of that he still kept up with his hero analysis books, being currently on the 16th edition. He had held on to the hobby for 2 main reasons: to prepare to be a hero, and because his brain has always told him to. The first reason is pretty self-explanatory, but the second? That part has always baffled him, but after a while, he just learned to accept it as something his brain does. While on the topic of Izuku's hero analysis notebooks, we can venture to the present day and catch up with a now 17-year-old Izuku Midoriya at his desk in Aldera High School, writing out his newest entry on the freshly debuted MT Lady. While continuing his entry, however, he misses an announcement from his teacher about their futures, and ends up only catching the last bit of it. Oh, and Midoriya is applying to UA too. This immediately snaps Izuku out of his writing to see a sizable portion of his class start to laugh at him, saying things about him along the lines of, "How? He's got no quirk," while the other half of the class just stayed quiet out of pure disinterest. One person, however, has a different reaction unlike any of his other classmates: Katsuki Bakugo. The kid Izuku used to call Kaken has really not changed in the time since they stopped being friends. Whilst he is the perennial, most popular kid in school, he also doesn't treat any of his classmates as equals, always thinking of them as beneath him and with a general sense of apathy. That is, of course, with one 5 feet 5 inches green-haired exception. Katsuki's opinion on Deku hasn't changed in the near 13 years since they stopped being friends, and if anything it has soured further. While back then he only thought Izuku was looking down on him for having something as rare as a Quirk mutation, it has somehow turned into him simultaneously looking down on Izuku for not awakening his quirk, and Izuku supposedly looking down on him for having said mutation. Suffice to say, after hearing that Deku applied to UA, the place he's supposed to go to, the place he's supposed to be the only one from his school to get into? Well, he's absolutely livid. Deku Bakugo screams as he goes to try and explode Izuku before being flipped over with a throw by the mop head. "Geez Bakugo, can we not do this so early in the morning?" Izuku asks as the teacher tells them to settle and sit down before giving Izuku and only Izuku a warning for his behavior. Izuku complies, not wanting to deal with the teachers sking Bakugo off in the hopes of him getting into UA University and giving the school a reputation boost. Izuku simply sits down and pays attention to the rest of class afterwards so as not to get into any deep trouble despite having studied ahead on all the material covered in class for the year so he can focus on his training. At the end of school, as class dismisses for the day, Izuku gets up and starts gathering his belongings to leave for the day and go home, seeing how it's his rest day today. Maybe I'll shoot Itsuka a message, see if she's free. While Izuku was stuck in his thoughts, he failed to notice the oversized Pomeranian walking up to his desk before it's too late and he grabbed his hero analysis notebook. Well, look what we have here." Deku still writes his stalker journals. Bakugo mocks him as he quickly schemes his notebook before closing it and saying, "What did I say about these Deku? They're creepy, and there's no way you can be a hero without a quirk like you have been most of your life," before trying to blow up his notebook with his quirk, before realizing that it didn't do anything to the notebook and scowling. "Of course you pull this type of sheet, Deku. Well, how about this?" he says before tossing the notebook into the pond outside and turning to walk away with his goons who were silently supporting him, before at the last second turning around and saying, "You know Deku, there still is a way for you to get a quirk. Izuku, who has been stone-faced this entire time, finally changes his expression to one of confusion before Bakugo finishes his statement with the thing that fully convinced Izuku that the old Kaken is long dead and buried. Just jump off the roof and pray you get a quirk in the next life, Bakugo says in possibly the calmest tone Izuku has ever heard him use in his life, before laughing and leaving the room with his cronies who quietly thought one thing, that was a bit too far dude. Unfortunately, his cronies also don't feel like angering Bakugo, so they just walk out with him and close the door. Izuku is simply stuck staring at the door for a few minutes. He just couldn't believe it, that Bakugo would stoop this low, that he's even trying to become a hero. Every interaction he's ever had with Bakugo, he's questioning absolutely everything he thought he knew about him. Mindlessly and a little numb, Izuku finally walks out of the classroom and goes downstairs to get his notebook from the pond while ranting to himself in his head, "Is he stupid? If I did that I'd be dead and he could be charged for encouraging it. God, I wish I could give him a taste of his own medicine and singe his skin with an explosion, that'd be so nice." Izuku finishes his internal rant and takes a deep breath to try and calm down, not noticing the shift in his quirk factor and where he was heading, not hearing a manhole pop open and a creepy voice say, "A medium-sized skinsuit? It's my lucky day," before attacking Izuku and trying to get inside his mouth. And no, this can't be it, this can't be how it ends. "Mom, it's Suka, Master Kendo, and oh, I can't die, I have to fulfill my dream, and become a hero, to be like All Might." Izuku thinks to himself, slowly feeling something coming up within his body while the villain goes on about Izuku being his hero. After another minute, Izuku seems to be fading, and the slime villain is happy, he can get away from him, not realizing the smoke coming from inside the kid before it was too late. A massive explosion goes off from within the kid, splatting the villain on the sidewalk and knocking him out while Izuku passes out after doing so, not hearing the manhole had popped open once more mere seconds earlier. A few minutes later. "Hi, my head," is the first thing Izuku thinks as he slowly comes to and slowly opens his eyes, before they pop wide open at the sight in front of him. All Might, it's All Might, in the flesh, here, with him. All Might? Holy crap, is that really you? I'm your biggest fan, can you sign this for me, eh? You already did, thank you Sir, this will be a family heirloom, Izuku yells out in awe at who's in front of him. "Ha ha ha ha, it's no problem my boy," All Might says to the kid while striking a pose, before speaking back up and saying, "Say young, what's your name?" Oh, it's Midoriya, Izuku shyly spits out, before All Might says, "Young Midoriya, yes I wish to ask, what was that quirk you used? You managed to splat the villain lickety split and made it an easy capture." This sentence leaves Izuku confused, did my quirk manifest? Izuku leaves that thought before saying, "I don't know sir, it confused me as well, but sir, may I ask you a question? It will only take a moment." All Might looks at the boy and thinks to himself, "Sorry kid, my time limit is running out," before looking back at the boy, putting the bottle he contained the villain within in his pocket, and saying, "Sorry kid, I need to turn this criminal into the police, have a nice rest of your day and stay safe. All Might, AWAYYYYYYYYY, before jumping away, not immediately noticing the added weight on his leg. "Wow, I knew my time limit is near, but this feels heavier than usual," All Might thinks to himself, before hearing screaming and looking down, seeing the kid he just left, holding onto his leg for dear life. All Might internally sighs before going to land on a nearby rooftop. A few moments later. As All Might lands on the rooftop with young Midoriya, the boy starts recovering and tries to ask his question before All Might shuts him down. Izuku, however, ignores his request, and suddenly shouts his question, "Can I be a hero without a quirk?" This makes All Might pause and turn around as the mop-haired kid continues mumbling, not noticing that All Might is smoking sheet, time's up. By the time Izuku is done, he looks up and sees a skeleton where All Might was before. This, of course, causes Izuku to panic. "Who are you? What did you do with All Might?" As Izuku finishes his rant, the skeleton steps in and says, "Easy kid, I am All Might. Now kid, you've already seen this form that is hidden from the public, so I might as well tell you the full story." As All Might finishes his statement, he sits down and pulls up his shirt and continues, "I got this 5 years ago. Oh, was it the fight with Toxic Chainsaw? Nah, his chainsaws couldn't even hurt me, you really know your stuff. No, it was a fight that I had hidden from the public for their safety, a fight that nearly cost me my life. So to answer your question kid, if I could come out in this state after a major fight as the #1 hero, then no, I don't think a person without a quirk could be a hero." As All Might finishes, Izuku is left stunned, barely paying attention to what All Might is saying as he leaves him on the rooftop. This trance is only broken by an explosion he hears in the background, which causes him to sprint full force downstairs to get to the scene, before remembering what All Might just said. That being said, if Izuku Midoriya was one thing, it was stubborn, so he buried that thought into the back of his mind before continuing his sprint to the scene of the explosion. 5 minutes later. As Izuku finally makes it to the site of the explosion, he is horrified at the sight. The slime villain All Might had caught was free, and took someone hostage. Oh no, the villain All Might caught got free? How? Wait, did it slip from me grabbing onto his leg? And as Izuku finished that thought and right before he beat himself up mentally anymore, he looked ahead and saw something familiar. A familiar pair of red eyes. Oh no, the villain got Bakugo? It's all my fault, I need to he cuts himself off internally, remembering All Might's words, and these words cause him to start berating himself internally, looking at the other heroes at the scene not doing anything. Sure, Backdraft was putting out fires and helping in that way, but every other hero was just sitting down like an elementary school kid in timeout, being completely, and utterly, useless. Izuku stops, he looks at Bakugo with a sense of sadness, of despair. He starts berating himself in his head. Damn it, if only I was useful, if only my goddamn quirk that is meant to be special actually activated, if only I had the speed of Hawks, the strength of Mirko, anything that I could use to help. And as he continues berating himself, he doesn't notice something in his body stir, his muscles compress and tighten, his bones and ligaments start growing and start stretching his clothes out, and he starts glowing a bit whilst this happens, before he stills again. He only has one thought in his mind, I must save Bakugo, before he runs into action. Izuku runs at the villain, and throws his backpack at his eye, seeing it as a weak point before running over to where Bakugo is and physically ripping him out of the slime with no effort and attempting to run away. Keyword, attempt. As Izuku starts to run, he doesn't notice the slime villain recover and tries to hit him and Bakugo. This, thankfully, doesn't happen, as a giant hand catches the monster. I should have listened to my own ideals, to always go beyond, plus. Ultra. All Might shouts to the heavens as he hits the slime villain with a punch so strong it changes the weather. A short while later. After All Might stepped in, everything sort of became a blur for Izuku. A group of heroes scolded him for jumping into a situation without a license while simultaneously praising Bakugo for his bravery who, for his part, treated it with a level of indifference. Today has been a long day, huh? Man, Mom and Itsuka are going to kill me. As Izuku was caught up in his head, as usual, he didn't notice that he was being followed, and said presence decided to make itself known. I am here to speak with you young Midoriya. The sudden appearance of All Might shocked young Izuku, especially with All Might proceeding to immediately cough out blood, causing Izuku to show worry before being told by All Might that he's alright. Anyhow, young Midoriya, I am here to amend the answer to your question and to ask you two of my own. My boy, I was too harsh on you. The last 5 years has made me a lot more jaded than I used to be and I took it out on you, and for that I'm sorry, All Might says, causing Izuku to almost immediately excuse All Might before dismissing him and saying it's alright and he made a mistake. To answer your question again, yes young man, I think you can be a hero with or without a quirk. Now young man, I need to ask you 2 questions. Izuku gives a nod that he may ask. First, do you have a quirk? And if you do, what is the quirk, young Midoriya? This question causes Izuku to stir a bit before saying, yes, I do have a quirk. As for what it is? I don't know. When I was a kid my doctor told me it was unlike anything he'd ever seen and that it was a Quirk mutation but he couldn't tell me what it was. All Might looks at him in thought before saying, well kid, I ask because you've shown 2 quirks today, albeit one is less obvious. When I came out of the manhole I saw you cause an explosion that ended up beating the slime villain initially, which made me think you had an explosion quirk and were acting ignorant as to not get in trouble for illegal quirk use, so I let it slide, and then earlier while I was watching what happened with the other kid, I saw you glow and start to suddenly bulk up as if it were a transformation quirk. So kid, All Might bulks up for a moment before finishing his question with, how do you have multiple quirks, young Midoriya? This question catches Izuku off guard, especially with his tone, before stuttering out to All Might, I don't know, I was just berating myself and imagined myself having these abilities and they just appeared? Maybe it's something to do with my quirk? As Izuku finishes, All Might softens before deflating again and saying, well kid, you said you didn't know your quirk outside of its status as a quirk mutation, yes, to which Izuku nods, causing All Might to nod his own, before speaking, how about I take you to someone who can help us figure this out? The answer to this will relate to my second question so I want a definitive answer. Izuku hears this and instantly nods, wondering who he could be talking about. Before hearing his phone ring, he looks to All Might who merely nods before pulling out and seeing the caller ID. Oh God, it's my mom, I have to go. All Might, do you think we can get me tested tomorrow instead? My mom is worried sick and I don't want to worry her more. All Might thinks about it for a moment. I can probably squeeze this in tomorrow, it'd be less conspicuous if we go during the day too, before coming to a conclusion. Sure young Midoriya, here's my phone number, text me after school and we'll set a meeting spot. Izuku looks on in shock, before quickly nodding, taking the number, and saying goodbye. Izuku Midoriya only has one thought when he goes to sleep that night: I can't wait for tomorrow to come, to finally find out what exactly my quirk is. The next day was a hurricane of emotions for the mop-headed boy. First he woke up in the morning, remembered everything from the day before, and nearly fainted. It was all real? I met All Might, and awakened my quirk? After Izuku's near 5-minute mix of a panic attack and dance of joy, he managed to get himself ready for the day. His arrival at school was interesting to say the least, with most of his classmates staunchly just ignoring him and the ones who picked on him backing off after seeing his quirk, or what they think is his quirk, in action while saving Bakugo. Speaking of the spiky-haired Pomeranian, when Izuku walks into class, he can visibly see the whole class stiffen as the inhabitants look back and forth between Izuku and Bakugo, curious to see what will happen. You can hear the cog in everyone's brains turn when they see Bakugo staunchly ignoring his bush-haired classmate while Izuku simply goes to sit down. When one of Bakugo's goons goes to ask Bakugo what's up, the teacher walks in and class starts for the day. The end of school. As class was being let out, Izuku is shooting All Might a text saying class is done, before being told to meet him at Tatooine Station in 20 minutes, to which Izuku sends a quick confirmation and gets up to leave the classroom, having foregone taking any notes in his hero analysis notebooks for today to be out the door as soon as possible. As Izuku goes to leave, he feels someone staring into the back of his head, already knowing who was doing it, and promptly ignores it with an internal excuse of, I have places to be. Izuku promptly rushes over to Tatooine Station within 15 minutes, and sends All Might a text saying he's at the station and his exact location, before All Might responds with a thumbs up and arrives, walking up to Izuku in his small Might form with a smile and a wave. Good afternoon, young Midoriya, how was school? All Might asks as the two of them have a little small talk and board the train. It's been a few minutes now, and All Might says they're almost there, to which Izuku finally asks the big question that's been on his mind: so, where exactly are we going, All Might? All Might, who was looking down at his phone before looking back up, and replying with a cheeky smile, it's a surprise, young Midoriya, before looking back down at his phone. Izuku, confused, simply says alright and waits the few minutes left on the train ride, wondering where he is being taken to be tested on his quirk. A few minutes later, Izuku is left staring at the gate, simply stunned at where he is currently. All Might, is this where I think it is? All Might lets out a hearty laugh before saying, yes it is, young man. This is, UAU. Izuku promptly faints at those words, which leaves All Might laughing even harder, before buffing up and picking up young Midoriya and having the gate opened by the rat bear mouse whatever he is. All Might walks onto the campus very carefully, making sure to not attract any attention, which isn't too likely to happen, since UAU is still in session for another half hour, and heads to the nurse's office to see his old friend. All Might approaches the door and gives it a knock before being given a somewhat quiet, come in, and opening the door. Inside of the nurse's office, All Might finds his old friend and close confidant, Chiyo Shuzenji, also known as the youthful heroine, recovery girl, sitting on a chair next to a made bed, with her clearly having been waiting a few minutes for his arrival. As All Might sets young Izuku down onto the bed, All Might proceeds to promptly deflate back to small Might. Hello there, recovery girl, how's it been? Still got a good amount of time until my next appointment, All Might says with a grin and a small wave, before the heroine gruffly answers with, could be better, especially with all of the students in Aizawa's class being expelled yesterday. My workload should be lighter for a while. The two adults speak to one another and catch up as the teenager starts to stir, alerting the adults, before Izuku wakes up fully and says, oh man, that was a weird dream, I was at UAU with All Might and Izuku looks on in shock before saying, oh, this isn't a dream, causing recovery girl and All Might to burst out laughing. This action, however, alerts Izuku to the other adult in the room, and he starts giving the biggest smile imaginable before nerding out, oh my god, it's recovery girl. Izuku proceeds to go on a minute-long mumble session about who she is, her quirk, her best moments, and everything in between before being stopped by a cane to the head by said woman. Good, you're awake, now. Yes, I'm recovery girl, and I was called by All Might to help you figure out your quirk. Now, All Might told me everything he knew. You have a Quirk mutation and it is so unique that the doctors couldn't identify it, correct? Izuku simply nods at her question, causing her to continue, all right then, tell me, how did you feel yesterday when you supposedly activated your quirk? Izuku thinks for a moment, thinking back to how he felt at those moments, before saying, for the explosion thing, I was thinking about how much I wished to get back at a kid I know in a fit of anger and frustration, and how much I wished I could give him a taste of his own medicine. I was then attacked by the slime villain and All Might saw the rest. I let out an explosion of anger. Recovery Girl simply nods at him before motioning him to continue. The second ability happened after I arrived to the scene of the hostage situation, after All Might said what he said on the roof. I started mentally berating myself over how this was my fault that the villain escaped, that I was to blame. Then, I looked to see who the hostage was and I froze. I saw one of my classmates being held hostage, and I started berating myself further. I started thinking to myself how useless the heroes on the scene were, how helpless my classmate, and how useless I was, before I decided I needed to save him, so I ran in, got him out, and then All Might ran in. You know the rest of the story, I assume? Recover Girl, after listening to his recollection, ponders on this information for a moment, before saying, all right Sunny, I have a hypothesis, but before I tell you I want to test something. Get up Sunny. Izuku immediately gets up before she continues, all right, I want you to imagine yourself with a horn quirk. Izuku hears this and is a little confused, but acquiesces and imagines himself with a horn quirk where he can use them as a blunt object on his forehead. A minute later, and everybody in the room hears an audible, popped sound, and both Izuku and All Might go wide-eyed. Recovery Girl simply chuckles before grabbing a mirror and passing it over to Izuku. He takes it and looks at his forehead, and Izuku is absolutely shocked as Recovery Girl begins again, now Sunny, I need you to try and transform again, can you do that for me? This time, Izuku just does it and he feels himself grow an inch taller and his physique bulk up slightly. Recovery Girl looks on with a smirk before concluding, it seems to me dearie, that your quirk allows you to create quirks. Now, I want to get the specifics on this so sit back down on the bed so I may run more tests. Izuku dizzily nods before laying back down to let Recovery Girl run all of her tests. 20 minutes later. After around 20 minutes of taking DNA samples and analysis from Recovery Girl, she calls over the boy and they, in her words, oath to inform them of the results. So dearie, after going through the few DNA samples you provided me including a speck of hair and your blood, it does seem as though your quirk has finally activated, and it's exactly what I thought it was. You have the ability to create quirks for yourself, and from what it looks like, it seems as though you are limited to one per classification of quirk. Now, I'd ask you what those are, but you look like you're about to burst into a mumble about it so I won't. Any questions dearie? After hearing the explanation from Recovery Girl, it all clicked in his head. Why his brain kept telling him to write those notebooks, why he's always asked questions about quirks to everybody he's ever met. Side note, yes, this does include Itsuka. It explains nearly everything he's ever done. His brain was trying to tell him what his quirk was, to help train him for the future, to help make sure he has an intuitive and high understanding of quirks and how they work on a molecular level. It was there all along, and yet he missed it because realistically the doctor he saw as a kid was right. Who could ever guess a quirk like that could exist? It'd be one of the strongest quirks in history with little to no downsides. One of the strongest quirks in history, in his possession. He really can do it. His dream is now not just a dream, but a goal, and a goal that no matter what, he will see to it that it happens. Izuku looks up sporting a face filled with pure determination, before shaking his head and saying, no Recovery Girl, I think I get it, thank you. With this quirk my finish line is set and there is only one thing for me to do. Izuku activates frustration and grows 5 inches taller before finishing with, to run as fast as I can to that finish line, and become the greatest pro hero in history. As Izuku finishes his spiel and the adrenaline wears off, he slowly starts to go a bit red in the face with embarrassment as he slowly shrinks back down, all the while missing All Might with a huge smile on his face. Nana, I think he is the 1 inch. As Izuku finally shakes off his red-faced embarrassment, there is a quiet knock at the door, with Recovery Girl simply saying, come in, sir, to which the door opens and a small creature walks in. Said creature is quite short standing at only 2'9" 1/2, wearing a snazzy suit, slacks, and a nice red tie, and physically looking like a combination of a rat, bear, mouse, and whatever other creatures he is. He has never said it and when asked just replies with an evil laugh. Why hello there All Might, what brings you to my lovely campus? The creature asks with a polite smile and tone. Hearing this tone, however, makes Izuku still for a moment. In front of him is the president of UAU himself. Known as one of, if not the smartest beings on planet Earth, President Nezu. Izuku almost immediately recovers before giving a bow and saying, hello sir, it is very nice to meet you. I am here with All Might to get Tez dash. Izuku tries to continue but is interrupted by the president. It's alright young one, I was informed of this by All Might earlier, I merely asked to see how you would react. Now, I am here for two purposes but the first one is quite trivial so let's start with that. Young man, I've been informed here by All Might that you keep quirk analysis journals, correct? Izuku simply gives a curt nod, too nervous to try speaking, before the president continues, may I have a look, young man? Izuku looks at him and sees a hint of genuine curiosity, no disdain or malice in his face, before going to his backpack and pulling out volume 16 and handing it to the president, who takes it and starts skimming through the contents for a few minutes. After a few minutes, the president hands the notebook back before starting to speak, young man, this is incredible. This is better than some work done by professionals. Nezu realizes he's being a bit too loud before calming down and continuing, anyhow young man, you have a clear talent for quirk analysis and I would like to make you an offer. If you get into UAU next year, I would like to extend to you a full-ride scholarship to our esteemed university and for you to be my personal student. Now you may be asking yourself, what does being my personal student mean? Well, it's simple, instead of you taking a standard science class, you will report to my office and I will personally guide you into improving your analysis skills to the point where you could even beat me in a battle of wits. Now young man, what do you say? As Nezu finally finishes, he realizes every other person in the room has their jaws dropped. President Nezu, one of the smartest creatures on Earth, somebody who rarely cares for others, and more rarely than that, never has personal students, wants Izuku to be his private student? As everybody finally recovers from their shared stupor, Izuku manages to scream out aloud, yes, I would love to be your personal student if you would have me Nezu-sensei. Izuku, once again, goes red in the face as Nezu lets out a loud laugh before calming the young man down and saying, now that that's out of the way, we can move on to the second thing. Although this next thing will require more privacy. Come on All Might, young man, you too Recovery Girl if you'd like, we're going to my office. Recovery Girl politely declines, to which Nezu responds with a nod, before gesturing to the other two and hopping on Izuku's shoulder, making Izuku freeze as Nezu simply tells him, it's easier for me, don't worry young man, I can tell you can handle carrying me, to which Izuku curtly nods, and the three start walking to his office. 5 minutes later. The president is sitting behind his desk with his hands on the table and a smile on his face. He looks at Izuku and All Might for a moment before saying, all right, the room is secure and there are no working cameras, All Might, you may start. Izuku hears this, a little confused, and looks at All Might who begins, now young Midoriya, what you are about to be told is a national secret and cannot be told to a soul outside this room. No matter what your answer is to this, you must keep it secret. Do you understand, young Midoriya? All Might ends his sentence, going into his buff form before deflating. He notices a nod from the kid and decides to continue, now young man, this relates to my second question I had yesterday, the one that had to wait until after you were tested. How would you describe the feeling you had when you ran to save that boy yesterday? Izuku thinks about his response for a brief moment before responding with, my body moved on its own. I simply had the thought that, I must save him, before my body moved on its own and ran into action. This answer brings possibly the biggest smile Izuku has ever seen on All Might, who in turn buffs up to finish, and says, young man, every great hero is said to have their bodies move on their own, to run into danger without the slightest hint of fear. You did just that, young man, what do you think my quirk is? All Might's question stumps Izuku, before responding with, I always thought it might be some sort of transformation quirk where you can change the size and muscle mass your body uses. His answer actually shocks All Might a little, wow, he somehow predicted my buff form existing, even if the guess is overall wrong, before All Might responds with, wrong young man. You see, my quirk is quite a special one, it is a stockpiling quirk that holds a very unique function. My quirk's true name is One for All, and it holds the ability to be passed down. IW, young Midoriya, to be worthy of my quirk. Izuku stares, jaw dropped for the second time in 10 minutes, before immediately passing out for a moment and being woken up by a glass of cold water being poured onto him. This immediately wakes him up and he pops up, alert before remembering what he was just told. Think hard on it young man, take your time, All Might encourages him while simultaneously deflating back into small might and taking a sip of his tea that Nezu made him. Izuku is sitting in his chair, thinking over his decision for 5 minutes, going on and on about the pros and cons of taking the quirk. After another 5 minutes, he sits up and declares his decision to the other two heroes in the room, All Might sir, I humbly accept your offer on 2 conditions, I wish to be able to tell my mother. No matter how dangerous it may be to do, I simply can't lie to her about this, and I wish to tell my best friend, she is also applying here to become a pro hero and has been the only friend I've had most of my life. A life, I would say, I could trust her with to always have my back and save. All Might and Nezu look back at each other and have a conversation without words before coming to a conclusion. All Might looks at young Izuku and says, "Kid, you've got a deal. To be honest with you, I was initially going to tell you not to tell anybody you know, but when you gave your demand something clicked in my head. Kid, even if you become my successor, I don't want you to become me, I want you to succeed me in everything, I want you to succeed in being a better hero, succeed in making better choices, and most of all young Midoriya, I want you to succeed me in being a better person. Now then young Midoriya, let me lay my question down for you once more." All Might bulks up into his bigger form and asks Izuku the most important question of his life. "Young Midoriya, I find you to be worthy of my quirk. Will you be my successor?" To which Izuku starts to bawl his eyes out while saying, "Yes. Yes, I will." All Might. The next 8 months were the embodiment of hell for young Izuku. After All Might gave the kid a few minutes to calm down and to deflate, President Nezu immediately passed the teen a manila folder labeled, "The American Dream Training Plan." Izuku looked a little confused at what he was given, before All Might decided to explain, "You see young man, in order to properly wield one for all, you need a body capable of doing so. I've wielded this quirk for many decades now and its strength is astronomically higher than it was when I first obtained it, and your body will need to be able to withstand the higher power. Thus, me and Nezu whipped up this training plan for you as soon as possible. The plan entails a lot of your day-to-day schedule for the next 10 months although if me and Nezu either deem you a worthy vessel early, or you finish early, then you will get the quirk early. Any questions?" Izuku lets All Might finish before speaking up, "What exactly will I be doing? And would it be possible if I could invite my friend to join for training? We always train together and I don't want to abandon her." Once the boy finishes, Nezu pulls out another folder, passes it to the boy, and lets out a chuckle while saying, "I had a feeling you'd say that." Izuku takes a quick peek at the folder, and sees this one is labeled the same thing, albeit they're quite different plans and they both may be altered at any point, then nods as All Might continues, "As for your other question young Midoriya, that part 1 will leave as a surprise. Just come to Takoba Beach tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. sharp, tell your friend to come as well. Get ready kid, because this will be hell." All Might finishes with a massive sheet-eating grin on his face that scares Izuku a little, before dismissing the boy and saying he should get a good night's rest. The next morning, you can see a pair of teenagers and a skeleton man walk onto a beach at 5 a.m. sharp. The first teenager is wearing a hair color matching green tracksuit, while the other is wearing her own hair color matching orange tracksuit, and the skeleton is wearing his own red and blue tracksuit that looks as though it barely fits him. "Good morning young Midoriya, and I believe you're young Kendo, correct?" All Might asks as the girl answers him with, "Yes, my name is Itsuka Kendo. Now if I may ask, who are you? And how do you know Izuku?" All Might gives a quick look to Izuku who simply nods, before buffing up, "I am here young Kendo, ha 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 ha." As All Might finally looks back at Kendo, he sees she is shell-shocked as she proceeds to fall to the floor for a brief moment, before popping back up and saying to both the current and next OFA users, "Explain, now." Both men look at each other and gulp, All Might proceeding to deflate, before beginning their explanation. 5 minutes later. Itsuka looks at the two as if they were insane. She looks to see if they're just pranking her, if she is just having a really weird dream. Itsuka quickly activates her quirk, slaps herself, sees she's still there, and sighs before running to Izuku and giving him a hug while saying, "Only you can do something so simultaneously brave and stupid, Izuku. Nonetheless, congrats on unlocking your quirk and on earning the recognition of freaking All Might." Itsuka lets go of him before giving him a slap upside the head before finishing with, "But that's for worrying me." Izuku nervously puts his hand behind his head before saying, "Sorry again Itsuka, but hey now we get to be trained by All Might himself." As he finishes, the man himself interjects and says, "Alrighty kids, we only have so much time, so let's get into it. Now, if you look around the beach, what do you see? Answer as honestly as possible." The kids look at each other for a moment, before Itsuka speaks up with, "It was formerly a great beach, but its currents brought trash onto the shoreline so it became an unofficial junkyard." As she wrapped up, All Might smiled and gave a thumbs up before speaking up, "Correct young Kendo, and what better for a training method for a couple of hero hopefuls than some good old-fashioned community service. You two will spend the next 10 months cleaning this beach up. For Izuku, it's for bulking up in order to safely obtain OFA. As for you young Kendo, this will be good strength training in order to maximize the efficiency of your quirk. Any questions?" Seeing the two had none, All Might nodded and blew a whistle that he suddenly pulled out and said, "Then get to work you zygotes." The two hear this, panic, and get right to work, both sharing the same thought, this is going to be a long 10 months. 2 months later. It has been 2 months now, and the pair's progress has been steady. Izuku for the first month or so was trying to overwork himself to get it done quicker. Itsuka, upon realizing this, slapped him upside the head as hard as she could, and told him off. That was the first, and, hopefully, last time Izuku will try pulling this sort of thing. After getting Izuku back on track, Itsuka and Izuku were on a very good pace with their training. If they had to put a completion percent on it like it was some sort of video game, they'd put themselves at around the 25% mark. If you were to look at the beach as of this time, you could at least walk through a decent chunk of it, but most of it is still covered in trash. During this time, you can also notice Izuku significantly bulking up. Whilst he was always in good shape, now he was explicitly trying to get physically stronger, and it was clearly paying off. The same thing can be said about Itsuka as well, albeit to a lesser extent, her training focusing mainly on stamina training rather than purely physical training. Nonetheless, the two have noticeably bulked up, yet their training has only just begun. A further 2 months later. It has been 4 months since the pair started cleaning the beach, and not much has changed. Well, okay, one thing did. Izuku began quirk training. Izuku figured out how to remove one of his set quirks, and chose to remove anger release from his loadout. It took Izuku around 3 hours to be able to create a new quirk, too. Which he created a quirk to honor his mother Inko, telekinetic pull. The quirk has the ability to pull any object towards him with a size limit. Anything heavier than the average male, 200 pounds, can give Izuku migraines. Izuku has been practicing with it to try and up the weight limit it holds on top of his own physical training. Itsuka has also been using her time to get quirk training in, finding a bunch of old appliances to hit full force to improve her stamina. Overall, to go back to the video game analogy, if they were to put a percent on how much of the beach was complete, they'd give it around 45%. If you were to try and go to Takoba Beach at this point, you'd be able to traverse a good chunk of the beach with little to no issue, albeit another good chunk of the beach is still completely inaccessible. In non-training news, Izuku celebrated his birthday with the 3 most important people in his life, All Might, Itsuka, and his mother. This was also the point where he finally told his mother about All Might and OFA, which may or may not have caused her to pass out for a few minutes. It was weird for Izuku to say he's a legal adult now, but hey, he'll just have to get used to it. Life for Izuku is pretty good at the moment, and despite the pain from training, he's the happiest he's been in a long time. A subsequent 2 months later. It has been 6 months now. I feel like a certain alien just sneezed, and Izuku and Itsuka are way ahead of schedule. You see, Izuku figured out a little cheat code in order to continue working for longer. He removed his horn quirk, one that took only an hour to be able to replace, and swapped it out with a quirk he dubbed photosynthesis. Now, photosynthesis is a very simple quirk. He gains energy the more he sits in sunlight, which, during times like, say, the weekend or days off school, meant he could essentially train from dusk till dawn with little issue. The only drawbacks to the quirk is that he has a cute little pair of antennas on his head that Itsuka relentlessly teased him about, and him needing to drink a lot more water than usual to maintain his body, much like a plant. Although, if you were to take pictures of Izuku and Itsuka now, and compare them to how they looked at the beginning of training, you'd have trouble telling they're the same people. Izuku in the 6 months has bulked up enough to where he looks to possess the stature of a Greek god. Izuku also managed to hit a growth spurt finally, and is standing at a modest, but still better, 5. Itsuka, on the other hand, has gone for more of a swimmer's build, deciding to not build herself like a bodybuilder to accommodate her quirk. Itsuka herself shot up in height, albeit not as drastically as Izuku, now standing at a crisp 5'6". To circle back to the video game analogy, the pair would estimate their completion to be around 85%. If one were to walk onto the beach as of this moment, you can walk nearly the entire beach with no problem, with only 2 or 3 spots left that are blocked off by trash. Now you may be asking, how did they increase their work output so heavily? Well, the answer is simple: strong work ethics, and a little bit of stupidity. Itsuka and Izuku made a plan after month 4, that they wanted to finish the beach early so they can focus on individual training the last few months before the UA entrance exams. The plan itself was simple: focus first and foremost on cleaning the beach, and be as time efficient as possible. For the last 2 months or so, the two have barely trained with each other, instead going at separate times in order to eliminate any distractions. This, on top of Izuku's new quirk, gave the two a cheat code to finish the beach. Speaking of which, 1 final month later, All Might received a phone call the night before from the pair of teens, telling him to be at the beach at 6 a.m. sharp. As the off-the-clock hero approached the beach while stifling a yawn, he looked up at a single pile of trash with both Izuku and Itsuka standing on top of it, both of them yelling and not wearing a top, albeit Itsuka was still wearing a sports bra. All Might looks in awe as he says, "Holy. Stinking. Supercrap." All Might bulks up at the end of his sentence, before rushing to catch a falling Izuku and Itsuka. "You two have surpassed my expectations. I expected this to take 10 months, yet you knocked it out, and I am so proud of the both of you. And I mean, look at you." All Might quickly pulls out his phone and shows them both pictures from the beginning of their training, before continuing, "You two were in good shape before, sure, but now you two look as if God started walking amongst men once more. Now, young Kendo, I unfortunately do not have a substantial reward for you. The only reward I thought to give you is a thumbs up and free food at your favorite cafe for a year. Deal?" Itsuka hears this and starts salivating at the amount of free coffee she could get before rapidly nodding her head and shouting, "Deal." All Might hears this and laughs, before giving her a gift card loaded to the brim in funds for her favorite cafe, before recovering and looking at Izuku. All Might ponders how exactly he wants to phrase this, but quickly settles on the simple way, "Now young Midoriya, for you there is a reward. Well, one other than a personal feeling of satisfaction. Young Midoriya, I deem you ready to obtain my quirk. Be proud, you've earned this gift through your kindness, bravery, and heroic actions." Izuku started crying near instantly once All Might called his name, snapping Itsuka out of her coffee-induced trance to pull him into a side hug as All Might finishes and pulls a strand of hair off his head. "Now young Midoriya, eat this." Izuku and Itsuka look at All Might with a face that conveyed confusion at what he said, and in Itsuka's case, an audible, "What?" All Might, seeing their confusion, decided to clarify, "Well, you have to consume my DNA, and I thought this was the least gross way. Unless you'd rather eat my toenail young Midoriya." Izuku makes a visibly grossed out face, takes the hair, makes the loudest sigh you'll ever hear, and eats it. All Might deflates down and tells the two teens, "The quirk will take a few hours to digest, so for now I want you two to go home and get ready for school. After school, I want the two of you to meet me at UAU, understand?" Itsuka and Izuku hear the name of the school they're applying to and get visibly excited, before giving All Might a simple, "Yes sir," and leaving for home. As the two run back to their homes, they only have one thought on their minds: how the hell will we be able to focus at school today? A few hours later, lunchtime. It has been a long few hours for our mop-haired friend, and he can't keep still in his seat. He could barely pay attention to any of his teachers or what he had to learn, and he didn't have anybody to speak to during lunch. He had finally awakened his quirk, and a good chunk of the bootlickers were back and were trying to get on his good side. Izuku, however, had decided to ignore those bootlickers he had to call classmates. After discussing it with Itsuka about his feelings while taking a break during training, he decided to keep himself isolated at school. With the bootlicking back, more or less all of the bullying had stopped as most people realized why he had the reputation he did. He still hadn't told any of his classmates what his quirk exactly was, nor did he plan to, no matter how much he gets asked. This questioning, however, was mostly easy to ignore outside of a certain Pomeranian-haired classmate. Bakugo multiple times now has tried to confront Izuku outside of school to force him to spill the juice on what his quirk is with no luck, as every time he even managed to corner him, a random object would hit him in the back of the head, he'd lose his grip, and Izuku would suddenly disappear. He would usually hide in a dumpster or something similar to get away. As we go back to the present, we see Izuku sitting outside by a shaded tree, quietly eating his katsusando 1 second, and the next he feels a sudden, massive spike of power within his body. This power spike came very suddenly, and it caused Izuku to suddenly lose consciousness. Izuku comes to, and sees a group of 8 silhouettes all looking at him, before one of them steps out of the shadows. Stepping out of the shadows, this white-haired young man seemed to be in his mid to late 20s, wearing a baggy, plain blue t-shirt, a pair of equally baggy, green cargo pants, and a pair of black and white sneakers. The young man stops walking, standing right in front of Izuku before beginning to speak to the young man. "So, you're the 9th, yes?" Izuku looked a little confused at this, before noticing he had no mouth to speak back with, and defaulting to nodding. The young man starts to give a small smile, before saying a few simple words: "We need to talk about your quirk, kid." Izuku gives the white-haired man a head tilt and a confused look, one which the man takes as a sign to continue. "Izuku Midoriya, my name is Yoichi Shigaraki, also known as the First. You are currently within One for All." Izuku tilts his head even more as Yoichi continues, "And young man, I am also your uncle." Izuku hears this and is left flabbergasted. An uncle? His mother had always told him that she and his dad had no immediate family, so how is this possible? It's a long story, but one I feel you should know. Izuku looks at Yoichi with a curious look before he says a simple, "I can hear your thoughts in here," to which Izuku relaxes a little. Izuku motions as best as he can to continue, to which the man obliges. 125 years ago, quirks had started appearing. The world was thrown into utter chaos, and a scramble for order began, one which my brother was the main player within. 135 years ago, my brother and I were born. Our mother had died due to complications during childbirth, and we had nobody in the world, no mother or father, we were alone. When we were younger, me and my brother had bonded over an old comic book, and I thought, despite his actions, that he still held some good within him. Yoichi pauses for a moment to let Izuku take the story so far in before continuing. This, however, was dashed when he came home one night and declared to me his dream, to become a demon lord, and to rule the world with an iron fist like the villain in that old comic. It was at this point that I realized my brother truly had no good in him, and I decided one thing: I had to stop him. Now, what does this have to do with you or One for All? Well, the answer is simple, nephew. It's his quirk, one which he himself named, All for One, the ability to steal anybody's quirk and pass it on to anybody he wishes. Yoichi pauses once more to let Izuku take the story in and continued. In comparison, I was thought of to be quirkless, and he held me in the basement within a base of his, to keep me safe, as he would say. One day, however, he entered the basement, once again, to attempt to bring me to his side, and to prove his point, he had transferred a stockpile quirk to me. What he and I didn't know, however, was that I did have a quirk, but it was a very niche quirk that was near useless. The ability to transfer quirks, and the two combined. This is how OFA came to be. Izuku, after hearing the whole story, was mortified at what he was told, at who his uncle's brother was, at what he had done to his uncle, and at how evil that man was. This did, however, leave a major question to Izuku: wait, but how does this relate to me? To which he hears a distinctly female giggle. Izuku looks to the left and sees a woman with black hair, an equally black bodysuit, a white cape on her back, yellow gloves, a red cloth around her waist with a belt buckle over it, and pure white boots. She stands at around 6 feet 2 inches, and seems to be 100% muscle. The woman giggles at the description he gives her, especially the comment about her physique, before speaking up: "Hey kid, how's it hanging? I'm the 7th, real name Nana Shimura, and like the first, I am also related to you, albeit more distantly." Izuku, once again, looks shell-shocked at meeting more family. She takes this as a sign to continue: "You see, your mother is my second cousin, the daughter of one of my cousins, and I had no personal contact with her outside of knowing she existed. Now, I am here to talk about the second thing you need to know. You see kid, that horrible man that your uncle talked about, his brother? Well kid, no easier way to say it than this: Hisashi Midoriya, your father? That is just an alias. His true name is Zen Shigaraki, also known by his villain name, All for 1 Inch. Izuku looks horrified. What do you mean his father is the greatest villain in history? But wait, that would explain a lot: why his father suddenly disappeared when he was younger, why he more or less ceased communication with the family after he was 12, and most of all, it explains his quirk. A quirk mutation isn't an out there idea per se, but it is extremely uncommon, and at that he gets a quirk unlike anything he's ever heard of. Before Izuku can continue spiraling, the first speaks back up: "Nephew, please do not beat yourself up. Your father is not indicative of who you are." These simple words manage to calm Izuku down, albeit slightly, as the man continues: "Now, we didn't think this would happen so quickly, but we have awakened early, and everything in here has been thrown into chaos. The reason why we did I wasn't so sure of until we read your memories and saw your quirk. As soon as I saw it, it explained everything. You see nephew, your quirk is from our side of the family, and due to your quirk sharing a lot of genetic similarities to OFA, the quirks have merged. We believed that this would be when OFA would reach singularity, but we didn't think it'd be this early, and at that, we didn't think the quirk would go to a direct descendant of mine. This has thrown a lot of wrenches into our plans, but so be it. If anything, this will make it easier. You see nephew, due to your quirk combining directly with OFA, it has strengthened significantly. Whilst you may still access a version of the stockpiling quirk that, if I were to place at a level, would be around the 100% strength of the 4th user, it has directly increased the strength and more or less removed all of the downsides of the original. While you still have to wait time to be able to replace a removed quirk, it seems to now be a flat rate no matter its strength, and the requirements for the weaknesses have been lowered significantly. As well as this, however, your quirk limit has been broken in quite a big way. Instead of being limited to 1 per, you may now create more than 1 of each, with a max quirk cap of around. The odd thing, however, is that the quirk type limit still exists, which isn't too weird per SE. What is weird however, is how it has certain limits towards mutation quirks, as you can only hold 3 of those before reaching your limit while being able to hold 6 each of transformation and emitter quirks. Any questions, nephew? Izuku is absolutely stone-faced at what he heard. His quirk was now even better than before? He lost most of the limitations it held? Well, this leaves him thinking only one thought: I truly can become the greatest hero in history, which leaves his uncle and cousin with small smirks on their faces, seeing the man their relative was. Some time later. After some time passes within the quirk, the mop-headed boy is told that his time is up, and he will be waking up soon. Izuku is a little saddened at this. He finally met 2 of his extended family members, and he has to leave already? However, before Izuku can continue with his negative thoughts, Nana speaks up, "Don't worry kid, this won't be the last time you'll see us. If you ever wish to enter this realm, you may within your dreams," which calms the boy down. Right before he wakes up, however, the first also decides to speak up, "Before you leave, nephew, I have one question to ask you." Izuku looks a bit confused, but nods as his uncle asks, "What is the name of your quirk?" Whenever asked, you would always avoid answering, to which Izuku goes into deep thought. When All Might or Itsuka would ask, he would deflect because even he wouldn't know what to call it. Now, however, he had the perfect name that would honor his family heritage, the good and the bad. Izuku looks up at his uncle with a face of determination, and only thinks one thing: my quirk is called All from One. This answer puts a genuine smile on his uncle and cousin, but before they can respond, Izuku wakes back up in the real world, and is gone. When he is gone, the 2 Vestiges only share one thought: if he is alive, then Izuku Midoriya, the 9th, will be the one to end him, once and for all. Yep, that's me. You must be wrong hero. Well hi, what's up? Oh, you want to know what happened after the formation of All from One when I woke up? Well sure, here you go. Izuku was confused as to what that voice was as he woke up in the school's nurse's office from him passing out earlier. As he groaned and tried to get up, he saw an impersonal note from the nurse addressed to him saying he's free to leave once he gets up and that his mother had him excused for the rest of the day. When he finishes reading the short note, he gets up to head to the classroom in order to retrieve his backpack, before looking in the corner and seeing his backpack on a chair. Izuku chose to just accept that a teacher brought it for him, and went to leave. As Izuku reaches for the door, he feels a notification from his phone which he promptly checks and sees a message from his mother saying to come home ASAP due to what happened, to which he sent her a quick explanation on why he had passed out, although he leaves out details pertaining to one for all to be safe, lest one of the 2 have their phones hacked. After hitting send, Izuku is sent a simple, "Okay honey, just make sure to text All Might ASAP and talk to him about it," to which he sends an okay. As Izuku walks out the front gate of the school, he decides to simply call the number 1 hero and tell him he's coming to UA early, a call that is picked up on the 3rd ring. "Young Midoriya? What are you calling so early for? You should still be in school," to which Izuku says it's an emergency and he needs to meet with him at UAU ASAP, to which All Might agrees and tells him he'll meet the boy there. Satisfied, Izuku says thank you and hangs up on the number 1 hero, before pondering something. The first said I could make a lot more quirks, right? Well how about I try that, to which Izuku imagines making a quirk for what he wants to do. After a few moments, Izuku opens up what seems to be a low-intensity black hole. After a few moments, the black hole is stabilized, and Izuku, in pursuit of testing, walks through. On the other side, Izuku pops out on the other side of the black hole completely unharmed inside the president's office, to which the president seems completely unfazed by this. "Ah, hello my bean sprout, I was expecting you, albeit not so soon. Say, what was that quirk?" And as Nezu asks, the black hole closes. "That is a quirk I have just created, and if I'm being honest, it's a quirk I made the specifics of to coincide with the name of a song I like, hee. Anyways, I'm going to call it Black Hole Sun, and to make a long explanation quick, I can open black holes in the air which I can control the intensity of and can use to teleport places." Once Izuku wraps his explanation up, Nezu applauds and speaks up, "That is a fine idea for a quirk. My bean sprout. Remember, never box yourself in with your creativity on your quirks," to which Izuku nods. Izuku, getting impatient realizing he was too early, decides to text All Might and ask where he is, to which he says he's at Tatooine Station at platform 35A, to which Izuku says okay, opens a black hole in front of the man, and texts a simple, "Walk through that, don't worry it's safe." All Might was confused to say the least, but decides to trust it as he walks through the black hole into Nezu's office, to which he looks at Izuku who says, "This is part of what we have to talk about." All Might understands this, and goes to sit at one of the chairs in the president's office, the mentor and mentee taking the offered tea from the Chimera, as Izuku starts to explain everything that happened. Half an hour later. Izuku wraps up his explanation of what happened to the president and number one hero, and he looks over to see the reactions from the two. What he didn't expect to see, however, was the slack-jawed faces of All Might and even the president. All Might, still in his stupor, attempts to speak up. Why you're sure that's what happened, young Midoriya? You're sure that you're not only related to my dead mentor, but also the son of the demon lord? I'm not drunk, am I, Nezu? To which Nezu proceeds to simply pinch the man and snap him out of his psychosis and has him speak back up. Yep, this is real. Well, young Midoriya, this explains the quirk you got, being an evolved version of All for One, but kid, I want you to know something. Izuku has never heard his mentor so vulnerable before, and the older man starts back up. You see, Izuku, Nana was like a mother to me. She was the closest thing I ever had to a mother figure, considering mine died at childbirth and my father left me in the system after my quirkless diagnosis. After that demon killed her, I thought I had nobody left. That was, until now. Izuku, if you ever need anything, and I mean it when I say anything, just call me and I'll try to get it for you. If Nana was family, then by God so are you. All Might wraps up, crying buckets of tears as Izuku runs up to the man and wraps him in a hug that the man so clearly needed, and let him go for as long as he needed. After a few minutes of crying, All Might finally stops and slowly pulls away from Izuku, although not before giving the young man a pat on the back, and wipes his eyes of the tears. Once finished, All Might takes out his phone and calls somebody, that somebody picking up on the third ring. Toshinori, to what do I ot Gran Torino, I need you to prepare to come to UA ASAP, in 5 minutes a black hole will appear in your home to transport you, it is important business. Gran Torino has never heard the man so serious in his life outside of talk about him, so Torino simply says, alright, and hangs up to go suit up. All Might gives Izuku a certain set of coordinates to open a black hole at, to which Izuku nods, and a few minutes later he sees a text from Torino saying he's ready. Izuku nods, and opens the black hole at the coordinates, and out walks an old man wearing a domino mask, a yellow and white bodysuit, a yellow cape on his back, and a matching pair of yellow boots with a walking stick. What do you need, Toshinori? That was so urgent, to which the number one hero responds to the hero with, remember when Nana said she had an estranged cousin she never met? Well, meet said cousin's son, Izuku Midoriya, also known as the 9th user of OFA. What is also worth mentioning, Torino, is who his father is. You see, his father is, All for One. He had found Nana's relative and decided to mess with us further by starting a family with her, and out came Izuku. Before you ask why we didn't tell you this, it's because we didn't find out today until the transfer occurred. Toshinori had never seen his mentor convey so many emotions in one look. Feelings of happiness, sadness, anger, and relief all flowed within the older man as he walked up to Izuku. Izuku, a little confused at who the man was about to introduce himself when the man spoke up. Kid, my name is Sorahiko Torino, hero name, Gran Torino, and I was the closest confidant of the 7th user Nana Shimura, and the man who trained All Might. Now, Nezu, activate training mode in the room. I want to test the kid. Nezu was a little shocked at the sudden request, but decided to oblige the older man and activated the room's training mode. Reader, if you wish to know why Nezu has a training mode for his office, the answer is quite simple. The president thought it was funny, putting a protective wall up in front of his desk where All Might and Nezu are observing behind. Izuku, hearing this, decides to make a quick quirk with the ability to change his clothes, and put on something more comfortable for fighting, this being his green tracksuit he would wear to clean the beach. After a few minutes of stretching for the two of them, the fight begins with Gran Torino instantly jumping from wall to try and blitz the kid. Izuku looks on at the older man as he decides to make a new mutation quirk to try and keep up with him, growing a pair of green cat ears, paws on his hands, and a green tail that sticks out the back of his tracksuit. Once the quirk fully settles in, Gran Torino looks surprised at what the kid did. He knew the kid probably had a quirk somewhat similar to AFO's, but he didn't expect him to use it in that way. As he went to send his first hit at Izuku behind the kid's back, he landed a solid hit to the back of his head, staggering him. Torino uses this opportunity to go for a follow-up, only to be blocked by the kid's tail, which attempted to slam him into the ground, only to hit nothing as the man simply escaped the tail's grasp. Izuku quickly recovers, and uses his new cat-like instincts to attempt to track the man's movement and finds a pattern. The man will jump all around for about 15 seconds, before going for a hit in one of his blind spots. After a minute of the man using this exact pattern, Izuku struck, activating frustration. He quickly grew up to 6 foot flat, and landed an enlarged paw to the man's face, forcing him to skid across the floor and Izuku to go on top of the man and pin him down. After a bit of struggling, the man yielded, causing Izuku to sigh in relief and shrink back down to normal size. After giving the man a couple of minutes to catch his breath, and for Nezu to turn the room back to normal, he spoke up, "That wasn't bad, kid. Most people aren't able to keep up with my pure speed, and what was that quirk? You just suddenly grew the features of a cat in the middle of the fight and were a natural with it." This assessment makes Izuku blush a little from the compliments, and says, "Well sir, I like to call my quirk all from one, and it lets me make any quirk I like so long as I specify how it works and what its weakness is. The cat quirk that I made during our fight, I think I'll call Ragdoll, and gives me the features of a cat." The old man sees how the young man is acting, seeing how similar yet different he is to Nana, and gives a small, genuine smile. "Toshinori, I can't believe I'm saying this, but you picked a DMN good one." A few minutes later, after everything in the office had calmed down, everybody decided to take a seat and discuss Izuku's training for the next few months. That is, until Gran Torino says something that shocks everyone, especially All Might, to their cores. "Nezu, I want to give the kid a recommendation for the UAU recommended entrance exam." Everyone in the room is stunned. Gran Torino has never warmed up so quickly to somebody, and here he is, wanting to recommend the kid, something he didn't even do for All Might. "Well, can I, Nezu?" Nezu recovers quickly and says a quick, "1 second, let me check," as he quickly pulls up the list of recommended students, and sees a slot open. "Well, I'll be Torino, there is one slot left for it, so let me confirm this on an official level. Gran Torino, do you recommend Izuku Midoriya to take the recommendation entrance exam?" The old man nods and spits out a quick, "Yes," and Izuku Midoriya, do you accept the recommendation given to you by Gran Torino? Izuku pauses. Does he really want to take the possible easy way out? Then again, is it the easy way if he worked so hard to do so and impressed someone who, in the short time he's known the man, was a tough man to please? Well, Izuku would have denied it, until realizing Itsuka would slap him as hard as possible upside the head if he said no, to which he resolved himself. "Yes, I accept the recommendation," which has Nezu delighted as he claps his hand and says, "Perfect, the recommended exam is a month earlier than the public exam, so you will have only 2 months to prepare. Also don't worry, if you somehow don't pass you can still take the normal exam." Izuku hears this and understands, before getting a phone call from his mother, to which he picks it up and is told to come home soon for dinner. That dinner is of course Katsudon, to which he says he will be home soon. "Sorry guys, but I have to run, can we discuss training plans tomorrow?" To which all the adults in the room give him a variation of, "No worries kid." Izuku asks if he can open another black hole, to which he is given the go-ahead and opens a black hole outside his apartment door. Once the kid was gone, All Might looked to the president and said, "You're gonna let him in anyways, aren't you?" To which the president simply gave an unsettling laugh. The day has arrived, it's the day of the UAU recommended exams, and Izuku is sitting outside the massive entrance to his dream university, absolutely terrified at how he may do on this exam. Nevertheless, he walks through the gate and heads to the front desk in front of the school entrance to get himself checked in for the written exam. As he approaches, he sees the hero ectoplasm with one of his clones handling sign-ins, and Izuku, of course, handles seeing a hero he likes with tact and dignity. He went on a nerdy mumble rant before asking for his autograph. After getting signed in, and an autograph from the hero, he walks in and heads towards the classroom he was assigned to for his written exams. While Izuku doesn't think he will ever be fully ready for the exam, he feels he is prepared enough that he will pass, that is before going on to have a near nervous breakdown while continuing to walk, before accidentally bumping into somebody. This bump thankfully knocks him out of his head. However, once he looks up, he sees possibly the most beautiful woman in his entire life. She is wearing a scarlet red dress, a pair of reading glasses, and a pair of color-matching high heels. He stares at the woman for a little too long as the girl starts to noticeably blush, causing Izuku to start blushing even further, before mumbling out a quick "sorry" and trying to walk away. Keyword, trying, as the girl grabs him by the shoulder and speaks up, "It's quite alright, we might be future classmates after all. My name is Yaoyorozu Momo, and you are?" Izuku sits in shock for a moment, before mumbling out, My name is Kudoriya Izumi, I mean Midoriya Izuku, if I may ask, what's your quirk Yaoyorozu-san?" Momo sees the earnestness in his voice, and decides to humor him a little bit. "My quirk is called creation. It allows me to create any inanimate object of my choosing using my body fat so long as I know the chemical structure. Now, let's be fair, what's your quirk Midoriya-san?" Izuku was prepared to answer this question at some point today, but right out the gate? Well hey, she seems nice, no need to lie. My quirk is called All from One, and I have the ability to create quirks of my choosing with a maximum of 15 at a time, with a limit of how many of each type I may hold. They must also feature some kind of weakness. Haha. Izuku finishes his explanation with a nervous laugh as Momo looks slack-jawed. How the hell does somebody this powerful act so timid? Well, no matter, he seems quite nice and doesn't seem to want to use her for her wealth. Momo decides to put her hand out and says, "Say, Midoriya-san, after this would you like to head to a cafe I quite enjoy? You seem like a nice person to be around." Izuku was slack-jawed himself now, albeit only for a moment, before accepting her hand and saying, "That sounds lovely yaoi dash, just call me Momo, my name is a bit of a mouthful for others, I know. That sounds lovely then Momo-san, you can just call me Izuku then. Now come on Momo-san, we may have gotten here early, but we still gotta arrive for our written exam," to which Momo nods and they walk and talk on the way to the classroom. A new friendship has been formed for the Quirk creator, and he couldn't be happier. 2 hours later. Pain. That is all Izuku can feel in his brain after taking the UAU written exam. He knew it was going to be difficult, but some of those questions seemed like material that isn't taught until your first year of university minimum, something which Izuku decided to be good on and study up. On in the case the president felt like messing with him, somewhere in the back of his mind, Izuku can hear the evil laugh of the president ringing out. As Izuku gathers his belongings, he sees Momo doing the same and decides to wait for her to gather her own, and as Momo finishes, Izuku timidly walks up and asks if she wants to walk to lunch with him, to which she agrees, and the two start walking to the cafeteria. While the two walk, Izuku notices just how easy it is to talk to his companion. She is never condescending, at least not on purpose, seems to genuinely enjoy his company, and seems to even tolerate his muttering sessions. This is a combo he has only really seen in Itsuka, although that's because the two have known each other long enough to get a kick out of the other's odd personality quirks, like with Itsuka's obsession with motorcycles or Izuku's All Might collection. It felt nice to have someone around who seems to enjoy his presence, and as he reaches the lunch line and then the front of the line, he sees the chef is the cook hero, Lunch Rush, whom he gets the autograph of, before grabbing his, as you can guess, Katsudon, and sitting down with Momo, the two striking some casual conversation, as Izuku feels somebody tap his shoulder, before looking and seeing nothing but a detached hand. Now Izuku, still the dignified young man, responded to this in the most mature way possible, scream like a little girl, to which he hears a laugh come from next to him, seeing a girl with green hair, a green workout shirt, a pair of green sweats, and a pair of athletic sneakers. The girl wields a toothy grin as she says, "Sup, name's Tokage Setsuna, Quirk Lizard Tail. Now I was going to sit by myself at first until I saw an absolute cutie with green hair, then I knew I had to get to know you, so what's your name Greenie?" Izuku was as red as a tomato. He has been told by Itsuka he looks attractive, sure, but he thought she was just pulling his leg a little. He didn't expect to actually get called that in public. All the while, Momo looks on, outwardly showing amusement towards the situation. Internally, however, she had a weird feeling in her gut that she couldn't explain, as if she's upset that somebody is talking to Izuku like that. But why? She has only known him for a couple hours? Well, she won't be finding out soon. As she sees Setsuna sit down, Izuku probably told her she can sit here. As the three spoke more, however, the more they seemed to all get along, and Setsuna, the social butterfly she is, decided to get the other two's numbers, to which the two acquiesced, albeit Izuku was blushing as he did so, which then led to Izuku and Momo exchanging numbers themselves. As the conversation was just getting good, however, they were interrupted by the PA system informing them the physical exam will be starting shortly and that everyone must be there in 20 minutes. Izuku, the quick thinker he is, gulps down the rest of his lunch in 1 minute flat before putting his bowl and utensils in the recycle bin, and rushing to the changing area near Gym Gamma, shouting a quick "good luck" to his two new friends. The two girls look at each other and then start laughing a bit, before getting ready for the exam themselves, giving the other a quick "good luck." 20 minutes later. Izuku, decked out in his light green tracksuit but still wearing his signature red sneakers, is waiting with the group of other students here for the exam. Izuku has the number 40 on him, with the highest number seeming to be 60, so I have to outshine at least 57 other people in order to make it in through the recommendations. Well, unlike the others here I have a trick up my sleeve. Izuku thinks of his little ring of security in his pocket, a quirk he thought of while reading through some old comics from the 20th century, and thought of making a quirk based off of it. Izuku feels a tap on his shoulder, and sees a man wearing a blue tracksuit with the number 41 on him, this man deciding to make conversation. "Oh the name's Inasa Yarashi, I just wanted to come up and say hi to my number buddy. Good luck on the exam," before the man walks away. Izuku was left with the blankiest of blank faces at that interaction, but decided to take it as a compliment, as President Mike comes out to address the students. Alrighty recommendees, welcome to the physical portion to the UAU recommended entrance exams. Can I get a yeah? To which only Izuku screams out a yeah, and immediately blushes at realizing he was the only one. Present Mike gains a smile on his face as he continues, number 40 gets it kids. Now, what you will be doing is quite simple. You all will be running a 3-kilometer obstacle course, and your goal is to finish as quickly as possible. You may use your quirks as much as you like, but you may not attack another participant. You can, however, choose to work with each other. Any questions? Everybody seemed to be quiet and seemed to have no questions, before Izuku slowly raised his hand. Yes, number 40. Can we prepare our quirks while we wait to be called? Of course, little listener. Any other questions? No? Good. Group 1 is numbers 12, 16, 23, 31, 41, and 43, you're up. As those called on get ready to run, Izuku starts prepping what quirks he wishes to use. Well, Black Hole Sun is always an option, but it would seem a bit like cheating, so it's out. Maybe Night Hunter? No, I still need to perfect that one. Maybe I'll pull out the big guns, and as Izuku ponders, he doesn't realize it has been 10 minutes, and it's his group up. As he walks up, Izuku sees one of his opponents is Setsuna and, taking a wager, approaches her with his idea. Hey, Setsuna, look, I know we are supposed to be enemies, but I think I have an idea for us to be able to win this guaranteed. Setsuna looks intrigued at the offer, and decides to humor him. What's the idea, Greenie? To which Izuku whispers in her ear. Setsuna's eyes bulge further and further out of her head as she responds, you kidding? I was a huge fan growing up, of course I know it, and to be able to do it for real? Alrighty Greenie, we're meant to start any second now, so how about we wait until everybody has left? Give them a chance, to which Izuku grins at her, and agrees. It has been a minute now, and Present Mike is calling everybody on their marks for the race, with everybody looking extremely confused at numbers 33 and 40 just sitting next to each other with a grin on their faces. On your marks, get set, Guu, the other racers start running the course, with Setsuna and Izuku just sitting there, before they start hitting a weird pose. The two have their arms extended counterclockwise of the other, before the two rotate their arms clockwise and step 3 steps towards each other while saying, Fu. The two then flip their arms back counterclockwise, closing their fists while saying, Shaun, and finish it by extending their arms out at an exact 90 degrees angle with their fingertips touching perfectly and the two screaming, HAAA. As they finish, a huge flashing light pops into existence and blinds everybody within the vicinity of the two. As the light fades, a new entity pops out, wearing a green and yellow vest, a black binder, a pair of matching green wristbands, a blue belt to hold up a pair of baggy white pants, and a pair of blue and green boots. This entity has a pair of antennas, green cat ears, a toothy grin, green paws, and a green tail. The being ponders on itself, what should this be called? I'm not really Izuku, but I'm not really Setsuna either. Oh, I know. You all can call me Setsuku. Now, let's win this race. Setsuku finally starts running the track, and within just a few seconds, they're already hot on the trail of first place. Setsuku is running ahead and, when they are in front of a steep pit with nothing but a pair of monkey bars to use to get over it, the fusion decides to simply use Setsuna's quirk to detach themselves and fly across the pit in 5 seconds flat. Everything after that was completely unnoteworthy, as the fusion simply ran ahead and flew over every obstacle with a speed so intense that barely anybody could keep up with them. In just 3 minutes flat, the fusion reaches the finish line in an easy first place. The fusion, after crossing the finish, decided to stop and hit a snazzy peace sign to the teachers, including a Present Mike who was nerding out the entire time at seeing a real-life fusion from Dragon Ball, and were then told to go back and mingle in the crowd with the other participants. Momo, upon seeing the two, has a face filled with nothing but confusion before walking up to them. Well, you two seem to have fun. Setsuku, hearing who called for them, turned around and gave Momo a peace sign before speaking up. Yo, Momo, how's it hanging? Momo looks at the two. She doesn't know, she's confused. So, how long does this last? Well, Momo, it lasts about half an hour, so I got like 25 minutes left. Momo, satisfied, tells the two, well, after finishing the race, the two of you are supposed to go do your interviews. So good luck the two of you. Setsuku is confused at how this is supposed to work now, but simply shrugs and goes to the president's office for their interview, deciding to use BHS to open a black hole to quick travel. A few moments later, Setsuku pops out of the black hole to the president, who was completely unfazed by the state of the two. Izuku, Setsuna, welcome to my office, you may sit down. The fusion, confused, decide to simply obey and sit on the chair in front of the president. Now, Setsuku, this interview is honestly more of a formality. I was already going to accept Izuku into the hero course regardless, but to see two people explicitly work with the other in such a method? That is something I've never seen in my time running this university, so the two of you pass. Setsuko looked extremely confused, before their combined personality came back out. Well, President. Setsuko is the strongest. The president can't find it in him to disagree, before saying, yes, you two are. Now then, you two are free to go and collect your items from the changing rooms. I look forward to seeing the two of you next month to observe the general UAU entrance exams. The Fusion look pleased as they use BHS to go into the two locker rooms to grab their belongings, including their phones to snap a picture of the Fusion for their other friends and for the others' contact photo, and head out to the front gate and wait for Momo. When Momo arrives at the front gate, she sees Setsuko still there, and when the Fusion goes to greet their friend, they finally defuse. Setsuna, as soon as she's out, starts to shake Izuku's shoulder. Dude, that was so cool. Can we do it again? Please? Izuku nervously laughs at this before giving a nervous, sure. The three walk away happily. They all passed their exams, and they will be going to UAU as classmates. This called for a celebration, and Momo decided to also invite Setsuna to the cafe she frequents, to which she got a quick, sure, from the lizard girl. Izuku can get used to having more friends, and as they board the train, he decides to send Itsuka a picture of the fusion he had with the caption, met some new friends and got to try fusing with someone in an active situation. See you tomorrow, to which Izuku got a simple, of course you dweeb, smiley face, which got a kick out of the mop-haired boy, leaving him with one simple thought, life is good. It is now the day of the general UAU entrance exams, and Izuku is standing there with his three friends. Momo and Setsuna are there to watch the exams with him due to making it via recommendations, and Itsuka being here to actually take the exams. Izuku, after going to the cafe with the former two, made quick friends and he decided to introduce them to Itsuka. Thus the last month or so has been filled with tons of hangouts with his new friend group. From relaxing at Momo's favorite cafe, which by pure coincidence is also Itsuka's, and studying for final exams, to going to a museum to, quote, see some dinosaurs, according to Setsuna, to even just a group training session with Itsuka to prepare for her entrance exam. However, the day has now arrived, and Itsuka is shitting her britches. After taking a few minutes to calm her down however, a certain blonde-haired Pomeranian walks by them and intentionally shoulder-checks Izuku. Izuku, noticing Bakugo, pays him no mind and simply ignores the shoulder check while his friends all call him out for being rude. Bakugo pays Deku and his extras no mind however, and simply walks in. He tried to interrogate Deku the day after the recommended exams, but got no answer from the mop-haired kid other than a simple PSS off and a kick to his little blonde bombers, a kick that did nothing more than make him extremely angry as Izuku walked away from the situation. Overall, their relationship hasn't really changed too much the past month outside of Bakugo being more aggressive towards him again. As the four walk in, Izuku thinks back to the conversation he and do the motions correctly. This, of course, resulted in the birth of a new fusion. Stepping out of the light is a relatively tall person, wearing a serious expression, a hairstyle most similar to Momo's but green instead, an outfit similar to Setsuko's but with red and green boots instead of blue and green boots, with a red belt on their pants. The fusion quickly speaks up, call US Yaodoriria, and we're on our way to help. Nezu, give US the exact coordinates of Site B, stat, to which the president obliges and a black hole quickly opens and the fusion steps through. The fusion enters the battlefield, wearing a serious look before they transform, growing to be 7 feet tall and growing a pair of wings that look like a bat's. That is, before the combination then uses frustration in order to grow both taller and stronger, now standing at 7 feet 6 inches with bulging muscles. The fusion also creates a sword out of its stomach and uses another quirk to transfer energy into it. Yaodoriria then flies off as fast as they can past the zero-pointer and makes a swiping motion with their sword onto its neck. This results in a loud clank, as the head of the zero-pointer falls to the ground along with the main body. Thankfully it doesn't fall in the direction where the fusion felt other people at, and the fusion then goes to the ground, deactivating their quirks but still holding the sword. Yaodoriria, seeing who was there, lightened up a bit before saying, Itsuka, good to see you. You hurt, as President Mike called the exam finished. Itsuka finally snapped out of it, and replied with a, yeah, thanks, before remembering the hurt girl. Oh right, this girl over here is hurt, can you heal her? The fusion nods and walks over to the girl, using energy transfer to re-energize her and speed up her healing process. Note, Itsuka knows about the quirks Izuku holds, which is why she knows to ask. It only takes a minute, but the girl's ankle is good as new and she finally speaks up, that's much better, thanks dude. My name's Jiro Kyoka, you, to which the fusion quickly responds, well this form is called Midoriya, we're a fusion of two people. One is named Midoriya Izuku and the other is Yayorozu Momo. Kyoka hears this and goes, wait fusion? Is that why you're dressed like that? Sweet. Well after helping to save me, you wanna grab a bite after this? My treat, before turning to Itsuka and the purple-haired boy, you two can join us too, you helped save me as much as these two after all. Hearing this, the orange-haired girl quickly nodded while telling Kyoka her name, and the purple-haired boy pondered for a moment before shrugging and saying, sure, name's Shinso Hitoshi. Midoriya speaks up however, hey, is it cool if we invite our other friend Setsuna? She came here with us and Itsuka and we don't want to leave her, to which the punk rocker quickly agreed. The group, with the exam over, walk out of the testing area as the fusion opens a wormhole back to the observation room and tells Setsuna what the plan is, to which the lizard girl nods, giving the faculty a quick bye and walking through it. The group has now gained 2 new members as they head to the local cafe, with Izuku and Momo diffusing on the walk there and properly introducing themselves to the other 2. The 6 have a relaxing rest of their afternoon at a cafe before all splitting up to go home, not before exchanging contact info however. Itsuka has a single thought in bed that night, well, that went well. President Nezu can be seen sitting in one of his many conference rooms with a manila folder in front of him. Surrounding him is his entire staff, all huddled up to discuss class placements for the year, mainly for the hero course, granted. It matters a hell of a lot less for the other courses, and debating who should go where. Before Nezu can speak up and tell the staff his opinion on their choices, one Shota Aizawa, aka the Erasure Hero, Eraserhead speaks up, alright Vlad, you can pick the rest of your class now and I will have no objections outside of 2 students, to which Vlad gruffly responds with those 2 being Eraser. Aizawa's face goes from a face of indifference to one filled with a sense of intensity as he finally says, I want Izuku Midoriya and Katsuki Bakugo in my class. I decided to do a bit of reading into the files of both and I found something concerning. While Bakugo's is completely clean with no infractions, Midoriya's is filled to the brim with negative comments and infractions speaking on him being an abrasive nuisance and about him constantly getting into fights. This leaves a lot of the teachers with faces of confusion, especially from the ones who met him like present Mike, as Nezu finally decides to interrupt, yes Aizawa, this was something I wanted to bring up before you spoke, but as somebody who got to interview Izuku for the recommended exams even in a fused form, he was nothing but calm and respectful. This brings me to a single conclusion. I think his school has fabricated a lot of the files for these 2. Now I cannot give a personal opinion on one Katsuki Bakugo, but even from the footage during the physical exam he seemed completely different. Everybody, hearing this, simply nods as Aizawa speaks up, then sir, if I may suggest. I'd like to have both of them in my class to monitor their behaviors and reaction to one another, to which the rest of the faculty simply nodded and moved on to the placements for the rest of the students, albeit with most of them having a bad feeling about the school the 2 attend. Meanwhile, with Izuku and his friends, 1 week after the general exams. Izuku and his friends were all a combination of bored and anxious, bored for the 3 who were guaranteed spots already via recommended, and the other 3 who are so anxious that it looks like they spiked 5 5-hour energies back to back. Izuku was sitting in his room bored out of his mind, having no real homework to do seeing how finals have already wrapped for him, before a light bulb went off in his head, and he sent a group text to his friends. Within a minute, all of them responded to his idea with a roaring applause of yes and, wait isn't that place a junkyard? Izuku and Kendo, however, were quick to correct them and say it had been cleaned until getting a K. With plans set for the next day, Izuku decides to simply go to bed to stave off his boredom. The next day, Izuku is sitting on the shores of Takoba Beach wearing a pair of green swim trunks and flip-flops, simply relaxing on a chair he brought to sunbathe. This however, didn't last long before he was tapped on the shoulder by Itsuka wearing a sheet-eating grin and a standard orange bikini. Itsuka quickly hits him on the back before screaming, tag you're it, as she runs away. Now Izuku was usually pretty chill with this kind of thing, but as soon as you make it a game? Oh he's gonna win this. Izuku gets up from his chair and immediately tags the nearest person to him, who happened to be Setsuna wearing a dark green one-piece swimsuit, as he bolts away screaming the same thing as Setsuna gets up herself and uses her quirk to chase them both at the same time in a display that is simultaneously amazing and disturbing. While this game of tag occurred, you can look at the rest of the chairs and see Momo, Hitoshi, and Kyoka all chilling and either reading, napping, or listening to music respectively. Overall, this was something the group needed, a day to just sit back, let go of their woes, and simply enjoy the company of their friends. 2 weeks after the exams, the Midoriya residence. Izuku was just at his desk sketching out a new hero who debuted that day in his analysis notebook when his mother knocked and screamed, "Izuku, your letter from UAU is here," to which Izuku bolted up and opened the door, grabbed the letter, said a quick, "Thanks mom," and closed the door. Izuku quickly opens the letter to see a disc fall out. Izuku seems a little confused at what it was before it activated with a bellowing, "I am here, as a projection," to which Izuku went from a little confused to being completely lost. Why is All Might in official UAU material? He is immediately answered by the projection, "You're looking at U.A.U's newest staff member, and I'm here to read your results." Izuku, already knowing he passed, simply listened as All Might read his full results, with him being in the top 10 on the written exams and a top scorer on the physical exam. All Might then swapped over to President Nezu, who gives his own announcements. "Now Izuku, you will be placed in Class 1A as one of the class's 2 recommended students alongside Momo Yaoyorozu. Your uniform will be shipped out within the next week, and information about the dorms will be sent to you within the same timeframe." The feed then swaps back to All Might for the last 10 seconds as he says something simple, "Welcome young Midoriya, to your hero academia," and the projector turns off. Izuku hears his phone start to blow up from his friends all saying they passed and where they will be placed, with Itsuka, Setsuna, and Hitoshi being in Class 1B while Kyoka and Momo were both with him in Class 1A. Overall, Izuku couldn't complain. He got to be in a class with 2 of his friends and wouldn't be far from the other. Izuku hears his mom burst into the room at that moment, and the 2 celebrate together. For Izuku, it was exciting. He was going to UAU and fulfilling his dream. For Inko? It was a bittersweet feeling as she knew her only child was moving away. The rest of the evening was overall pleasant, if a little melancholic. Meanwhile, the Bakugo residence. Katsuki Bakugo finished his projection, and within a second he had blown it up. The F, you mean he was only second place? He blew those monsters to hell and back, yet that extra got above him with some bullshit rescue points? What a crock of shit. Well, no matter, Bakugo at least didn't see Deku on that list, meaning he probably failed, which brought at least a small smile to the blonde, as he had one thought on his mind: I'll put those extras in their place and show them who's boss. Meanwhile, once again, this time at the Todoroki residence. Shoto Todoroki rarely outwardly expresses his emotions. This was one of those times, his projection from UAU having just wrapped up. What do you mean he didn't make it in? How? He had destroyed more robots than anybody in his area, shouldn't that be an instant pass? Who cares if others couldn't get out of the way? How was he supposed to know there would be a person that was fully invisible? That's just unfair to Shoto. Shoto, after fuming for a couple more minutes, finally calms himself down. This is just another setback, one that he can overcome. He's still in general education, he can still make it into the hero course. He just needs to sit back, continue his training, and win the sports festival. Shoto Todoroki, fully calm now, gets up and goes to the training room. He has a lot of work to do, but his goal is absolute. He will become the #1 hero without his shithead of a father's quirk. Izuku was all packed up. His entire room laid bare as he had his boxes of merch he was taking with him to UAU along with his clothes. He also had tons of boxes filled with other merch sitting in his closet as he didn't want to totally overdo it when it comes to merch. Izuku and his mother were outside of their apartment, both shedding tears as they hugged each other and gave their goodbyes. Izuku, sweetie, I know how strong you are, and I know what a great hero you will be. Just promise to come visit every now and then, okay? Hearing this, Izuku gives a shaky nod and an audible, I will, I love you mom, and Inko responds with a simple, I love you too. Izuku, after another minute of hugging, decides to break away as he uses Black Hole Sun to make a portal big enough for him to put all of his boxes outside of the UAU dorm. Thank God Nezu gave him permission to do this, and walked through himself with the wormhole closing soon after. Inko looked on at where her son was, before walking back into her apartment, now a lot emptier, and cried a little. At UAU. Izuku steps out of his wormhole with all of his boxes in front of him, and activates frustration to grow to an even 6 foot and increase his strength, picking up all of his possessions in one fell swoop and walking to the front door of the UAU dorms. The mop-haired boy simply knocks on the door before being quickly opened by an excitable blue-haired girl. Hey Hey, welcome to Heights Alliance. My name's Hato Nijire, but you can just call me Nijire, and I'll be your TA for the year. I live on the first floor and I'm also a 4th-year student. Izuku shockingly kept up with the quick explanation the girl gave him as she then goes into full question mode. So what's your name? What's your quirk? Does it have to do with your tail? Wait, but I also saw you use a different quirk, was that just a side effect? Nijire goes on, and and on for the next 20 minutes as Izuku somehow keeps up with her rapid-fire questions. The questions get interrupted however by the door behind them opening to see a tall boy wearing glasses and with engines in his calves. Nezu quickly moves over to the boy to question him, giving Izuku the chance to get away and unpack. Izuku looks at the floor plan for the dorm and thanks All Might he isn't on the same floor as Bakugo, as he carries his boxes up with him to his room on the second floor and takes out the key he was sent with his uniform and dorm info. Izuku quickly inserts the key and opens the door before walking in and getting to work setting up his room and unpacking. 3 hours later. Izuku wipes a bead of sweat off his brow, a bit tired at how long his setup took for his hero shrine room. Hearing his stomach growling, he decides to head down to the kitchen area to whip up a quick lunch. Izuku gets up and heads down to the first floor to see a few people sitting in the common area, seeming to have already finished. Those people included a brunette with a bob cut and a permanent blush on her face, a relatively plain-faced blonde boy with a tail sitting behind him, a white-haired boy with multiple arms on his back wearing a face mask, and the boy with engines in his calves from this morning. Izuku walks over to the couch area and gives a quick greeting before asking if any of them want something for lunch, to which they all give a variation of yes. Izuku simply nods and goes to the kitchen area to start making lunch, and by lunch, I mean katsudon, taking out the frozen pork in the fridge and cutting it into pieces. If there is one food he always takes seriously when it comes to cooking, it's his katsudon. 20 minutes later. Izuku steps out of the kitchen with 5 bowls of his favorite meal, yelling to those in the common area that food was done, and they all quickly got up and dug into the delicious-smelling meal. All of them reacted with a face that screamed, "Oh, that's some good shit," as the group continued eating. The group were all done in around 5 minutes as Nezu walks up, seeming to finally be done greeting new arrivals as Izuku between bites quickly says, "There's more in the kitchen if you want, Nezu-senpai," to which the girl rushes right into the kitchen, plates katsudon for herself, and sits down to devour it. 10 minutes go by, and the group of 6 all finish as the 5 1A students decide to introduce themselves. "My name's Ida Tenya, Quirk, Engine. I have engines in the back of my calves that let me increase my speed dramatically, but they still consume fuel nonetheless," said fuel being specifically orange juice. The boy wrapped up his explanation with a wave of his hands in a motion that seemed rather robotic. The masked boy decided to go next as another mouth popped out, named Shoji Mizo, Quirk, Dupli Arms. "I have a group of tentacles on my back that I can manipulate and turn into any body part," and Shoji wraps up by putting his tentacle back to normal. The tailed boy went next, stating, "My name's Masahiro Ojiro, but you can just call me Ojiro for simplicity. Quirk's called tail and it's pretty self-explanatory. I have a tail that I can use as another limb." The boy with the tail finishes rather flatly as the lone girl goes next, "Hi there, my name's Uraraka Ochiko, Quirk Zero Gravity. Anything I touch with all 5 fingers on my hand loses all of its gravity, although if I overuse it, I get nauseous and vomit up my breakfast, haha." The gravity girl finishes with a nervous laugh and her arm behind her head. Izuku is getting looks from the rest, realizing it's his turn, as he gets up, "Hello, my name is Midoriya Izuku, and my quirk is all from 1. I have the ability to create quirks for myself permanently with a limit of 15 maximum. I can also only hold a certain amount of each type, and some of these quirks include the mutations I have, such as the flower petals on my head, as well as the cat tail, ears, and paws. I also have a couple transformation quirks like my Quirk Nighthunter that lets me turn into a giant bat creature. I also wield a lot of emitter quirks such as telekinetic pull, which lets me pull objects towards me, and Metamoran dance, which lets me fuse with others by performing a dance. Any questions? I know my quirk can be quite confusing." Izuku, almost as soon as he asked that question, knew immediately he had messed up as Nezu spoke up and rapidly fired him with tons of questions for a solid 5 minutes, which somehow ended up with him teaching Nezu the dance by her request and fusing with her. The fusion looks similar to the other fusions he has performed aside from having a blue binder over their chest and hair that is teal-colored in Izuku's hairstyle, albeit longer than normal. The fusion looks to the group with a cheeky grin as they speak up, "Hey Hey, name's Nijiku," as the group deadpans. Ojiro proceeds to ask a question, "Wait, but if a fusion is fused, can said fusion fuse with another person?" This question actually stumps the combo. Izuku had never thought of it after all. So the fusion said, What the hell, which one of you wants to try with us?" as Uraraka quickly raises her hand, Me. "That sounds like fun," to which the fusion gives her another grin and a thumbs up as she explains the dance to Uraraka and, within a couple minutes, does the dance with her. What happened next astounded Nejiku. It actually worked. The fusion proceeded to fuse further with Uraraka as the new composite popped up. With teal-colored hair in a bob cut, permanent blush marks on their cheeks, and Uraraka's finger pads on the tip of their, guess. The boots also went from blue and green to pink and green, but the belt stayed blue. The even newer being pops up and gives a massive thumbs up with a cheeky grin of their own. Hey yo, name's Nunchaku. How's it Hanjin? To which the people at the table just stare with a blank face. The fusion, not noticing the facial expressions, speaks back up, thanks for the idea Ojiro, this is Susu cool. We definitely gotta try this again sometime. As the fusion decides to start flying a bit, Momo and Kyoka decide to finally walk down, and seeing a fusion in the room, they knew who it was. The group who were downstairs knew this was gonna be one hell of a year. It had been around 3 days since the students of Class 1A all moved into Heights Alliance, and these first few days have been strange yet fun. Night 1 he was staying there, and everybody was out in the common area doing icebreakers to introduce themselves. From Aoyama Yuga's sparkly introduction, to Tokoyami Fumicage's revelry in the dark stuff. Everybody in his class seemed to be rather pleasant with 2 exceptions. Bakugo for obvious reasons, and Minetta Minoru, who could best be described as a massive pervert that was constantly harassing his female classmates in increasingly perverted ways. By the time everybody was going to bed, Izuku was contemplating using Black Hole Sun to send him to space before reminding himself that's considered murder. Izuku had a very bad feeling about this kid, and he'd find out soon enough to be correct. Day 1 of class, 6 a.m. Izuku heard his alarm go off at 6 a.m. sharp, immediately getting up and turning it off. The all-from-one user quickly threw on exercise clothes and went for an early morning run. That is until he entered the common area and saw Nijire-senpai standing there in a matching blue sports bra and yoga pants. Izuku, seeing his senpai like that, starts blushing a fierce shade of red as the girl speaks up, Hey Izuku, going for a run? Wanna join me? My friends are never around this early. This thankfully snapped Izuku out of it before giving a quick sure and going outside with his senpai for a morning run. After around 20 minutes and 3 miles later, the two were sitting on the porch of Heights Alliance, Nijire having passed the boy a water that he caught with telekinetic pull and downed in 30 seconds flat. Nijire, seeing him do this, let out a little giggle that embarrassed the mop-haired boy, before speaking up, say Izuku, that was a lot more fun with company, wanna go again sometime. Now normally, Izuku would say no. Every time he looked over at his senpai during the run, he nearly fainted, but with her making that face? Sigh, I'm going to regret this, aren't I, was what Izuku thought, before outwardly responding, sounds fun Nijire-senpai. This quickly gets corrected quickly by the girl who's now up in his face, Nuh-uh, Nijire, no Nijire-senpai, just Nijire, got it, to which the boy simply nodded with a red face. Nijire backs away finally and says, good, now go hop a shower, class is in 2 hours stinky, which had the boy give a simple nod before running in to get ready for his first day. Izuku wouldn't ever admit it out loud, but that was a very nice start to his day. 1 hour later. Izuku was finally walking downstairs to get some breakfast. After taking a nice, longish shower for himself and brushing his teeth, he walks in to see one of his classmates, Sato Rikido, had made pancakes for the first day. Hey Midoriya, you want pancakes? Now there are very few things you can use to bribe Izuku. Hero merch, Katsudon, old comic books, and amongst that short list are some freshly made pancakes. Izuku dusted over to the counter like a cartoon character, all the while quickly nodding his head. This got a laugh out of the baker before he handed the boy a fresh stack of chocolate chip pancakes. Izuku, now having his target, dusted once more to the dining table, and sat next to Kyoka and across from Momo. Izuku looked down at his plate and, I think the best way to describe it would be to say he devoured them. He devoured them so thoroughly in fact, that he went up and got seconds that he also devoured. After finally being satisfied with his third plate, he finally looked up and saw his friends all threatening to burst out in laughter. In Kyoka's case, she was already bursting out laughing, which left Izuku a tad embarrassed with him putting an arm behind his head as he joined her in laughing. The laughter doesn't last too long however, as Izuku can see in the corner of his eye that Minetta was staring directly at Momo with a look of pure lust, and that disturbed Izuku a lot. Now Izuku has always thought that it's one thing if you see a woman and think she is cute. That's what Izuku calls normal. That is not the face that Minetta was making. His face looked like the kind a serial SEC offender would make before they did something. This kept Izuku on edge as he determined that he would keep a very close eye on the shorter boy. By the time Izuku was out of his mind, it was already 8 a.m. and class started in half an hour, so the boy told his classmates that it's time to leave. This, thankfully, got most of his classmates up quite quickly, besides Minetta who Izuku noticed was still looking at Momo, and they all left for class. Izuku could only hope his first day would be okay and that nothing would happen. Class 1A, 8:25 a.m. Izuku and his classmates all made it with 5 minutes to spare, with the exception of Tenya, who left for class at 6 a.m. and Bakugo, who left at 7, and looked for their assigned seats, to which Izuku went to sit. Izuku had also noticed the presence of another person in the room and he didn't want to take any chances. This idea paid off at 8:30 on the dot when class started and all of his classmates were still speaking. That was, until they heard from the corner of the room in a loud yet bored tone, "If you're just here to socialize, feel free to leave." This one sentence quickly managed to shut most of the class up as the one who said it stepped out of his sleeping bag and walked up to the podium in front of class. The man, in Izuku's honest opinion, looked utterly exhausted, as if he could pass out at any moment no matter if he was standing or sitting. The gruff-looking man decided to finally address the class. "My name is Shota Aizawa, and I will be your homeroom teacher for the year." The class all looked shocked that this was their homeroom teacher as the man grabbed a bag and took out a gym uniform. "Each and every one of you, take one of these, get changed, and go to the field. Nijire will show you where it's located." Before the man walked out without waiting for any of his students. Izuku, being a quick listener, got up and walked past the uniforms, deciding to simply use a clothes-changing transformation quirk to change his uniform into the gym outfit. He made this quirk after getting rid of the initial clothes change quirk for storage. He did keep the name, however. Everybody else besides Bakugo took a moment to get up and follow his lead. Izuku decided to simply follow his teacher directly to the feed, wanting to find out who he was. Maybe he was an underground hero? Who knows? However, as Izuku and the man reached the field, he shockingly spoke up. "Midoriya Izuku, correct?" This had slightly shocked the boy, but he quickly recovered. "Yes, Aizawa-sensei," to which the man nodded and cryptically said, "Good luck, kid," which confused Izuku even more. Izuku had no time to question that statement, however, as his classmates and Nijire all walked out dressed in their gym uniforms. Gym uniforms. That made him look away from Kyoka, Momo, and Nijire at how good they looked wearing them. Looking away, however, the boy's eyes landed on Minetta, who was still staring creepily at Momo. Izuku decided to play a bit of detective and went to ask one Ijiro Kirishima, as he seemed like the type to be upfront and leave no details out. Izuku quickly walked up to the other boy as he quickly greeted him. "Yo Kirishima, can I ask you a question?" The boy, thankfully, quickly answered, "Sure thing, what's up Midoriya bro?" To which Izuku's face turned serious and bluntly asked, "Did Minetta say anything weird in the locker room?" Now, Kirishima Ijiro was normally a pretty straightforward guy, one who didn't judge others, but the things he heard Minetta say? Well, he was being asked for details and he wouldn't hold anything back. He kept going on and on about how hot the girls in class were and how much he wanted to grope them, Yayorozu especially. Every time one of the other guys would call this out to him, he would deflect and say it's natural for a guy to want to touch some melons, before calling them gay. "My question for you now is, why are you asking for this information, Midoriya bro?" Izuku listened to Kirishima recount what the purple-haired boy was saying, and was absolutely fuming. By the time Kirishima asked him why he wanted to know, Izuku simply looked at him with a look of pure rage as he said, "He's been staring at Momo all day with a perverted look. The kind of look someone holds before they assault somebody. Momo is a good friend of mine, and I won't let that happen." Kirishima heard this and was somehow even more disgusted, before saying, "How about this Midoriya bro? We'll both keep an eye on him and if anything happens, we report him immediately. Capiche?" To which Izuku quickly agreed and extended his arm out. "Sounds good to me Kirishima." The boy then quickly reciprocated with a manly handshake. As the two separated and went to the front lines, Mr. Aizawa finally started speaking up when he saw the full class had arrived. "Welcome, today we will be holding a quirk assessment test to gauge your abilities." This had most of the class scream out in shock. "EHHH, a quirk assessment test," which Uraraka quickly recovered from. "What about orientation?" The teacher quickly responded, "If you wish to be a hero, you have no time for unnecessary crap like that. UAU prides itself on its open curriculum that allows the teachers freedom, and I will be using that today." This left the class a bit stunned considering he held a good point, and the man continued, "They've had you doing these tests since middle school, and yet they've never let you use your quirks for your scores in order to give an illusion of equality. That is, unfortunately, some horse shit that the government still tries to spew to make everybody feel better, and it's completely false. Now, Bakugo, you were the highest ranked on the entrance exam in this class. What was your furthest ball throw in high school?" This question intrigued the blonde bomber at the phrasing, "I guess the extra who got first is in the other class," before responding, 80 meters sir, with the boy getting past a ball by his teacher. "Try again using your quirk. Anything goes as long as you stay within the circle." The Pomeranian look-alike heard this, nodded with a massive grin on his face, as he went in the circle, winded up a pitch using his quirk, and threw it as hard as he could while loudly screaming, "DIE!" After the explosion settled down, the boy looked to see his homeroom teacher turn the device around, showing a distance of 775.2 meters, which pleased the boy as Mr. Aizawa spoke up again. Now you've seen the benchmark. This is the most rational way to run this class and see your true starting line. One Mina Ashido, after hearing this, was about to say quite possibly the worst response possible to this statement: we get to use out quirks? Oh, this seems like so much fun. Silence. That is all that fills the field, their teacher's hair rising and eyes glowing red, before spitting out words that will haunt this class for years to come. Fun, huh? Well, here's something fun: whoever gets the bottom ranking in the class will be expelled from UAU, effective immediately. For the second time that day, the class was gobsmacked. Expelled? But they just got here. Now, it is time for one Uraraka Ochiko to say the second dumbest response one could possibly give to a statement of this caliber. That's not fair. We just got here. Aizawa's hair continued to rise in the air, getting ready to enter one of his rants about fairness, but he was beaten to it by the least expected person possible. Izuku shouted out, "Uraraka-san, don't take this the wrong way, but life isn't fair. Villain attacks? Unfair. Natural disasters? Unfair. Genetics? Totally unfair. I've always held the belief it is the job of heroes to fight this unfairness in the world, to make it fair for its citizens." Izuku turned his eyes to his teacher, and finished his mini-speech. No matter how unfair this may seem, we will balance the scales, and overcome this challenge. Who's with me? At first, nobody could say anything, until one person started clapping, then another, and another. Eventually, everybody on the field was clapping, outside of Bakugo, who didn't want to acknowledge Deku, and Minetta, who was still just staring at Momo. Aizawa turned to look at the boy, hair now down, before he began speaking. "Well said, Midoriya. Now, get in line, we're starting with the 50-meter race," to which everybody exploded with a "yeah." 1.5 hours later. The last hour and a half have been hell for every student here. The 50-meter dash was one people thought would be dominated by Ida, but Izuku actually managed to outdo him, using Night Hunter to fly across the field in 2.59 seconds, narrowly beating Ida's 3.04 seconds. Bakugo, in comparison, only got 4.13 seconds, and his rage started building up. Next up was grip strength, one that was dominated by Shoji with a strong 540 kilograms, Kojiro Bondo getting a good 340 kilograms, and Izuku using frustration to get a score of 320 kilograms. Following that was the standing long jump, which Izuku cleared by doing a high jump using ragdoll, easily clearing the sandbox. Azuitsuyu passed the box using her frog-like attributes. Shiro Hanta used his tape to make it by the sandbox. Aoyama cleared the distance using his naval laser. Bakugo used his explosions to easily go over the box, and Uraraka made it quite easily using her zero gravity. The rest of his classmates either cut it close but barely made it, or landed within the box. The repeated side steps were dominated by both Izuku and Minetta throwing his ball on the floor and bouncing between them rapidly while Izuku set up 2 BHS wormholes next to him and went through it infinitely. Aizawa determined they were tied. The distance run went on for around 40 minutes, with most of the students dropping out in 10 minutes with 3 exceptions. Momo can be seen riding the course in a FING motorcycle she made. Ida was just running as much as he could, and Izuku being able to infinitely run due to photosynthesis. Eventually, Aizawa had to ask how long the three could go, with Izuku mentioning he could go until nightfall with his photosynthesis, Momo saying she had enough fuel for a whole day, and Ida saying he could go until around 5 p.m. Aizawa, not wanting to be here all day, took them at their word, put those times down and told them to move on, not noticing Minetta still giving Momo that weird stare after dropping out first. The seated toe touch was pretty cut and dry. Most of the girls got it pretty easily, same with Izuku due to ragdoll, and Ojiro who managed it with his martial arts training keeping him quite nimble. Aizawa saw that next up was sit-ups, and just told Izuku he'd get the top score for the same reason he got his score with the distance run. Izuku nodded but still decided to pair up with Kirishima to help the manly man get a great score, which the boy thankfully did, getting a score that would put him in second place. Now, we get to the final event, arguably the most important event. An event that shows your direct strength, the ball throw. Arguably the simplest event out of the 8, well, okay, maybe not simpler than sit-ups, but you get the point, yet it's the event that shows off your potential the most. Aizawa quickly told the class that Bakugo didn't have to go again, which everyone understood, before calling up the first student, Minetta, you can start us off. Minetta, still staring at Momo with that look in his eyes, finally breaks out of it for a moment, before running up to his teacher, grabbing the ball, and throwing it as far as he could, 20 meters. Minetta, now done, rushes off and goes back to staring at Momo weirdly, something that both Izuku and Kirishima notice but decide to hold off on mentioning, as Aizawa calls up the next student. Izuku was still thinking about what to do with Minetta. He thought long and hard about the pros and cons of reporting him to the school. Pro, he'd be gone and the girls could be safe. Con, he has no proof other than a gut feeling. Izuku has been balancing these pros and cons in his mind for the last 5 minutes, but he is suddenly interrupted by the voice of his teacher, telling him he's up. Izuku almost immediately snapped out of it, and went to the front. He prepared to just use frustration again, but before he could, he felt the quirk not respond. Turning around, Izuku looks at his teacher, hair rising once again, and finally puts the dots together. You're Eraserhead, right? Well, why re you erasing my quirk, sir? Aizawa hears this and gives a quick rebuttal. You've been only using the same 3 quirks, I know you have more. Use the growth quirk, your cat mutation, or your bat transformation again, and you're expelled. Izuku, hearing this, just simply sighed, mumbling under his breath about wanting to keep this secret, and turned to Momo, telling her, "Gimme the ring, Momo," a sentiment the girl reciprocated as she threw it to him. Catching it easily, Izuku turns to look at Aizawa, a grin on his face, as he says, "How about this, sensei?" To which Izuku starts putting the ring on, with said ring turning green. Izuku, once the ring is on his left hand, turns his right hand into some weird lantern-looking thing. Izuku looks around to his class, and asks a simple question: who here has read some classic comic books? To which Kyoka, Momo, an angry-looking Bakugo, and shockingly Tokoyami, he reads old Batman comics, all raised their hands, before saying, "Well, get ready for this." Izuku puts his left hand into the lantern thing on his right hand, and starts reciting some sort of oath: in brightest day, in blackest night. No evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might, beware my power. Green lanterns light, and with the end of the oath, a bright green light appears around Izuku. His outfit changed to that of a standard Green Lantern's uniform that you'd swear was taken straight from the comics, with a bodysuit spawning on Izuku, the chest piece and boots being an emerald green, the biceps and legs being black, and the gloves being white. Izuku, taking his hand out of the lantern, turning his right hand back to normal, and now in full uniform, decides to make a construct of All Might himself. The man seemed to appear in his full glory, before Izuku passes the ball and tells it to throw it as hard as possible. The construct obliged, taking the ball, and throwing it as hard as possible, causing a small sonic boom. After a full minute, Mr. Aizawa turned around, a wide grin on his face, saying, "DMN kid, now that's a limit," before turning the device around, revealing a score of infinity. The class plus Nijai are all erupted in cheer at their classmate's feet, the one who cheered the most, of course, being Momo, who ran up to him and hugged him. This action, Izuku could see, had set off Minetta, who was seething in rage at him touching Momo. That rage, however, paled in comparison to one Bakugo Katsuki. Bakugo had finally snapped, and he flew towards Izuku with his explosions, ready to teach him a lesson. That is, before he was caught in midair by a green construct. "Now, Bakugo, come on, you don't have to be so angry just because I beat you. Now you have 2 options here, Bakugo. 1, I beat the sheet out of you for your attempted attack of me, or 2, I let you go, and you leave me alone. So, which one will it be?" Nobody, in the short time they've known him, had ever seen Izuku act like this before. They knew Bakugo was like this, but that response? From Izuku? Really? The class recoiled even further, when Izuku dropped Bakugo and the boy just simply walked away. Aizawa, out of his trance, spoke up. "Midoriya, don't incite violence with your classmates. Bakugo, do that again and you'll be on the fast track to expulsion." "Understood." Bakugo just stood idly before Aizawa reiterated, "Understood," with his hair up. The boy simply nodded. Aizawa, satisfied with this, turned to his students. "Now everybody. Good job today. It's irrational to go one by one, so here's the full list. First, Midoriya Izuku. Second, Yayorozu Momo. Third, Bakugo Katsuki. Fourth, Ida Tenya. Fifth, Tokoyami Fumikage. Sixth, Shoji Mizo. Seventh, Ojiro Mashireo. Eighth, Kirishima Ijiro. Ninth, Ashido Mina. 10th, Uraraka Achiko. 11th, Koda Koji. 12th, Sato Rikido. 13th, Azuitsuyu. 14th, Aoyama Yuga. 15th, Kojiro Bando. 16th, Shiro Hanta. 17th, Kaminari Denki. 18th, Jiro Kyoka. 19th, Hagakure Toru. 20th, Minetta Minoru. Minetta Minoru was crushed. He was going to get expelled, and he hasn't even gotten to cop a feel? No, this can't be how it ends for him. This can't be how it ends. Minetta rushed towards Momo with his hands out while psychotically spitting out, "I can't be expelled without copping a feel," before feeling himself be stopped by the same green energy that stopped Bakugo just minutes earlier. Izuku has a look of pure, unadulterated rage on his face. He pulls the purple thing towards him, scowling straight into his face as he also starts growing due to frustration, still wearing his lantern uniform but now standing at a clean 6 foot. Izuku just spit out to the boy, full of anger, "Now listen here, you little purple pervert. Everyone in this class has heard enough from you. You think I haven't seen how you've looked at Momo, how you've looked at all of the other girls, and now you attempt to sexually assault one of my best friends? So help me God, if you ever attempt something like this again, I will tear you apart, limb from limb. Do you hear me?" Minetta was too scared to say anything, causing Izuku to restate himself, "I said, do you hear me?" to which the boy simply nodded. This reaction finally helps calm down Izuku, him going back down to his standard height, before speaking once more. "Aizawa-sensei, I'm going to call President Nezu, tell him about this incident, and drag him to the president's office for expulsion. Is that okay?" Normally, Aizawa would be lecturing Izuku for his behavior, but after hearing his reasons, he couldn't blame the kid. Minetta tried to assault one of his closest friends. Aizawa gives a small sigh, before saying, "Yes, go take him to the office. Minetta Minoru, you're expelled from UAU, effective immediately. Your stuff in the dorms will be sent back to your home in 3 business days. Have a great rest of your life." Aizawa wraps up his expulsion by motioning Izuku to take Minetta away to the president's office. Izuku quickly obliges. Aizawa then turns to the rest of his class. "Now, to be transparent, I never planned to expel any one of you, but that changed with Minetta's actions. You're all dismissed. Just go grab your syllabus in the classroom. Yaoyorozu, if you need to talk to someone, the guidance counselor is always an option," before the man walks away. Later that night, Izuku's dorm. Izuku can now be seen getting ready for bed. He's had a long, luring day. After dragging Minetta to Nezu's office where All Might happened to be, All Might decided to behind to hear what happened and, after a minute of thinking of what to do, picked up the purple worm and said, "Now, young Minetta, maybe it's time I teach you the meaning of consent, don't you agree, Nezu?" The president could be seen with possibly the most evil smile Izuku's ever seen on him, and chose that moment to excuse himself. Even hearing the screams, Izuku could only feel so bad for that scumbag. Since he left the president's office, he went to the classroom that was thankfully empty, picked up his stuff, transformed back into his normal uniform, and used BHS to go right to his room. Izuku wanted some alone time to think about why he acted like that. Izuku, being Izuku, started to think over everything that happened. "I know what I said to Minetta was a little too far, but I honestly have a hard time feeling bad. He deserved it after all. He tried to assault Momo. I couldn't just let that happen to one of my B-. To one of my B-. Izuku froze. Why couldn't he call her that? He really liked Momo. She was really smart, fun to talk to, extremely wait, where did that come from? Izuku was stumped with his thoughts. Where did the attractive comment come from? Why was he thinking like that? He's known Itsuka for way longer and has never actively thought of her like that. Sure, he did think Momo was attractive, but Itsuka also was, unless it's something different. Izuku continued thinking. It had been around 2 hours of non-stop back and forth thoughts in his head about how he felt about Momo. He thought about why he was so protective back there, and as hour 2 hit, he heard a knock at his door. Izuku absently said come in and opened it using telekinetic pull, not realizing who it was. Standing at the door was one Yaoyorozu Momo holding a bowl of katsudon. Izuku, noticing who it was, motioned for her to come in, his spiraling thoughts beat med. Momo puts a small smile on her face as she enters and closes the door, before putting the bowl she was holding down at his desk, and goes to sit on his bed. The 2 teens sat on his bed awkwardly for a few minutes, nobody knowing how to start, before Momo began. "Izuku, I just wanted to say, thank you for stopping Minetta. I don't know what I'd do without you," and Izuku responded with a simple, "It's what a hero would do." After that, they stayed in silence for another minute, before Momo spoke back up. "All right, listen to me, Izuku. After everything that happened today, I thought long and hard about it. I thought about what could have happened, about Minetta, and especially about you. Izuku, the last couple of months have been the best of my life. I hadn't had any true friends before I met you, Itsuka, and Setsuna. I've been homeschooled most of my life, and the only people I've met my age were people trying to secure my wealth. Not you though. You've never once looked at me like I was nothing but a walking checking book, like I was an object, like I was a possession. No, you've always looked at me for Yaoyorozu Momo." Momo turns to her side, now looking directly at the boy. "Midoriya Izuku, I think I love you. Will you go out with me?" Izuku was sure he misheard her. Momo loves him? No, that can't be what she said, can it? Do I even love her? As Izuku continued spiraling and thinking on his response, he put his thoughts into perspective. Sure, Itsuka was a great friend and was someone he considered attractive, but Momo? Every time he looked at her, he needed to look away. She was quite possibly the most beautiful person he's ever seen. Then, it clicked. Izuku finally came to his conclusion, as he looked directly into Momo's eyes. And Momo, I didn't know what to do either. The last 2 hours, I've been thinking about you, what would have happened if I was too late, how I would have felt about it, and Momo? I don't know how else to say this, but, I love you too, I would love to go out with you. The two looked at each other, feelings all out there, as Izuku leaned in slowly with his lips, before closing the distance. Now, Izuku usually wasn't one for dramatization of events, but it truly felt as though fireworks were going off in his head, and he imagined the same thing was happening for Momo. Both Izuku and Momo were left with one final thought as they continued kissing. She turned one of the worst days of my life into one of the best. Second day of class is the charm, was what Izuku was thinking as he could be seen walking through the halls. With one hand free as the other is preoccupied with one Yayorozu Momo, also known as his new girlfriend. Izuku still can't believe it. He honestly never thought that was a word he'd say. Sure, he didn't think of himself as unattractive, but to go out with the Yayorozu Momo? Now that is a pipe dream. Last night, Izuku's room. Izuku was on cloud 9. He had just finished making out with Momo a few minutes prior, and decided to finally start eating the katsudon she brought when his stomach suddenly growled. Izuku, of course, tried to scarf it down as soon as possible to get back to his make-out session, and once he finished, Momo started talking. Now Izuku, before we go back to doing anything, I just wanted to inform you of something about myself. Izuku, curious at her request, simply nodded for her to continue. To be as blunt as possible, I am bisexual and polyamorous, any questions? Izuku hears this, a bit confused, and decides to say a quick, what does being polyamorous mean, with his mouth still a little full of katsudon. This had Momo respond with a light chuckle and her speaking back up, it means in no simple terms that I may feel romantic attraction towards multiple others. Does this make you uncomfortable? I wish to know before committing to a relationship with you. Izuku thought about this for a moment, feeling the tension in the air rise for a not-so-brief second, before responding, can I be honest Momo, which the girl nodded for him to continue. After thinking about it for a moment, I think you're not the only one I have romantic attraction to, but my brain kept being itself and saying, no, bad, that'd be cheating, so I guess I am also polyamorous. Momo looked simply delighted, all the tension in the air gone in a flash, as she ran up to give him another peck on the lips and said, splendid. Do not fret if you have that sort of feeling about others. All I ask is you tell me and we can discuss how we feel, okay? Izuku simply gives her a nod and shyly asks if they can continue making out. This question is answered by her slamming her lips into his, a spot they stayed in until curfew when the alarm blared and Momo had to head back. This, of course, led to her giving him one more peck on the lips and telling him good night. End of flashback. Izuku, still holding Momo's hand, makes it to the classroom with her and Kyoka by his side, not noticing Kyoka's red face she still held after the two informed her of their relationship. The two broke their hands apart right before swiping the door open, the lovebirds having decided on the walk there that they would like the relationship to stay private for the time being. Izuku and Momo walk up to their desks, with Momo taking the now open seat behind Izuku considering Minetta's expulsion. The two sit down and take out their supplies for the day, ready for anything. Lunchtime. Izuku sits down at a table filled with Itsuka, Setsuna, Momo, Jiro, and Shinso, the conversation now truly starting with Izuku sitting down. The sextet have an animated conversation, with the 1A students recounting the events of the previous day leading to the 1B girls grabbing Momo and pulling her into a group hug while asking if she was okay. Momo sat in the hug for a moment before telling the others she's okay and that yesterday was saved by something amazing happening that night. That phrasing, of course, intrigued the group, with Setsuna, being the gossip she is, asking what she meant. Well, later that night, I realized Izuku never came down for dinner, so I decided to whip up a meal and take it to him. When I knocked, I heard a faint come in and opened the door. Izuku looked at me as if he'd seen a ghost, so I put the food on his desk and sat next to him on his bed. I gave him a quick thank you to which he responded with a quiet of course, and the air became dead. Eventually, I decided to be brave and, well, Momo finishes it by grabbing Izuku's hand and raising them, leading to a squeal and another hug from Setsuna, with Itsuka and Shinso giving their congratulations. Izuku, deciding to be a jackass, decided to turn the tables on Setsuna for once. Hey Set, just an FYI, our relationship is flexible. Izuku wraps up his teasing with a smirk and a wink, leaving Setsuna a stuttering mess for a moment and giving the rest of the group a laugh. While Setsuna was left a stuttering mess, the rest of the group had an animated discussion about the events of their first real day of classes and how mundane they were. Sure, the teachers are pro-heroes, but other than that? English class with present mic was still an English class no matter who was teaching it, if maybe 100 decibels louder than a typical university course. The bell rang, the group of friends gave their goodbyes to those in the other class, and the three started walking to their classroom. The three students of 1A all knew it was the day. The day they had their first heroics class, and oh boy were the three nervous. Classroom. All 19 students were sitting down, patiently waiting for their heroics instructor to arrive. Everybody had a prediction on who it would be. Some thought it was just going to be Mr. Aizawa. Some thought it would be someone who is well known but not the highest ranked like MT Lady or Kamui Woods. Uraraka thought it might be 13 for some FING reason. But Izuku? Oh, he just had a gut feeling. One that would come true a moment later. I am here. Coming through the door like a normal person. The entire room burst into a loud cacophony of cheering. All Might himself was their heroics teacher? He was also wearing his Silver Age costume as Azui pointed out. This loud cheering also gave the chance for All Might to goofily walk over to the podium. Now kids, today we will be doing something very important. I am here to teach you the basics of being a hero, and there is only one way we can truly start. All Might finished his announcement with a flourish and pulled out a card reading, Battle. This announcement gauged a variety of reactions from the class, ranging on a scale of scary enthusiasm, you can only guess who reacted like this, and general excitement, to a bit of hesitancy from some in the class who didn't know if they were ready for combat. And kids, what is a hero without their costumes? All Might turns his body and points to the wall, showing the cases starting to protrude out. They all correlate to your seat numbers, although we will have TO update young Yayorozu's, ha ha ha. After you change, head to ground beta. All Might, AWAYYYYYYYYYY. All Might finishes his speech by jumping away, gently opening the door so as to not get fined by Nezu, and goes into the hallway. Izuku is, of course, the first person to get up and grab his costume. His costume used to be a lot different than it is today, Itsuka saying it quote, makes you look like a giant bunny. Thankfully, Izuku relented and decided to change it. But then it changed again. 3 months earlier, Izuku's bedroom. Izuku can be seen laying in his bed, thinking about the info he learned. He was the son of the Demon Lord? How else would somebody react to this information? Izuku, however, being Izuku, decided to think about the backstory his uncle had given him. These two brothers who held so many differences and contrasting ideologies, still loved each other, and, in a way, still cared for each other. Izuku kept pondering on the backstory until he remembered a specific detail his uncle gave him. Didn't he say they had bonded over an old comic book or something? Izuku then had a great idea for something relating to his future hero costume, and decided to meditate to try and, hopefully, go within one for all. End of flashback, ground beta. The whole class can be seen sitting outside, wearing their brand new costumes. Some of these were pretty good, from Ida's bulky-looking armor, to Aoyama's flashier, less bulky armor. Most of them looked pretty DMN good. There were also some, not so good ones, from Ojiro's kinda basic martial arts GI, to Sato's yellow full-body suit that makes him look like an original luchador you find as a jobber in a wrestling game. Thankfully, Momo's suit is one of the good ones, being similar enough to her original outfit but being made out of a material created using her DNA so as to let her use her quirk without having to expose a ton of skin like she originally planned to. Her outfit consists of what looks like a red swimsuit with a brown skirt and a smart watch that allows her to look up the composition of any object she so desires. Momo can be seen chatting it up with Kyoka, who seems to be wearing a half-leather jacket, a slightly torn salmon-colored shirt, a pair of blue headphones, a black choker, a bit of red face paint under her eyes, black pants, a pair of gray boots, and speakers on her hands with outlets in them for her to connect her quirk to. Looking good Momo, Kyoka says with a teasing smirk, to which she gets a quick response from the other girl, you're not looking too bad yourself Kyoka, giving the punk rock girl a bit of a blush at the comeback. Anyways, have you seen Izuku? Momo hears this and gets a tad confused, you haven't seen him either? The two look at each other, confused at the whereabouts of their friend, before hearing a set of footsteps approaching the area. Looking behind themselves at the entrance, they finally see their friend wearing his outfit. Izuku can be seen running out of the tunnel donning his costume, consisting of a black domino mask covering his eyes, a bright blue cape reminiscent of All Might's costume he wore in America, a dark green bodysuit, a brown utility belt with an angular golden buckle holding it up, and a pair of matching white boots and gloves. The bodysuit also has a logo in the center of its chest that looks like a Venn diagram, with the middle circle holding a lowercase q that squiggles to the left and right of the Q's descender, making it look like an infinity symbol. Izuku runs up to his two friends, a smile on his face, and greets the two with a friendly smile. "What's up? Nice costumes you two. Thank All Might you updated your costume in time, Momo. Now you can cover yourself up more and still use your quirk." Izuku was about to continue his tirade, when the class heard a louder than usual coughing noise. "Alright everyone, looking good. They say the costume makes the hero, and I'd say you all look like a bunch of hero hopefuls now. Shall we begin, Zygotes?" The entire class cheered, excited for their first heroics class. "Does anyone have any idea what we're doing today?" Not even a second after the last word left All Might's throat, Ida already held his hand up to ask a question. "Sir, this is a battle center from the entrance exams, are we doing mock battles again?" This line of questioning got a quick response from their teacher. "Great question, young Ida, we will actually be taking those mock battles 2 steps further. Class, where would you say the most crime takes place?" This question, as All Might expected, got a quick hand raise from Izuku. "Indoors, right? While we see more battles happening outdoors, that is only a small minority of cases solved." All Might quickly brought his hand up into a thumbs up, saying, "Correct young Midoriya. These crimes can range from simple drag smuggling to full-on human trafficking, and it's the job of the hero to stop these villains in the shadows." All Might puts his hand under his chin. "Now, for this exercise, you will be split into teams of 2, with each team being determined by drawing lots, and these teams will face one another in an indoor 2v2 battle, heroes versus villains. With young Minetta's expulsion, however, one of these teams will have 3 members and will thus have to fight twice, once at the beginning and a second time at the end of the exercise. Any questions?" All Might knew he screwed up almost immediately, with him being bombarded with questions from the students. These ranged from reasonable enough, like Ida asking if drawing lots was the best idea, this being a question Izuku quickly answered, satisfying his classmate, to some slightly dumb ones like Aoyama asking if his cape was shiny, and even a concerning question about how badly you can hurt your opponents. Throw a wild guess for who said that. "Easy now, my quirk isn't super hearing." Now to go in order, young Asui, we're doing this without training as to gauge your beginning skill level. Wins and losses are determined by 2 conditions. The heroes win by either touching the fake bomb that is in the building, or capturing both members of the other team. To coordinate better, both teams will be given earpieces to use. All Might finishes the first half of his statement by dramatically pulling out a roll of the capture tape to show the class. The villains win by either letting the 15-minute timer run out or again capturing the heroes. Does that satisfy your question, young Yayorozu? This gets a quick yet polite, "Yes, thank you," from said girl. Young Bakugo, if I determine that you're going too far with your opponents, I will step in. I am not Aizawa, so no expulsion, young Uraraka, and nice cape, young Aoyama. Now settle down please, my quirk still isn't super hearing. All Might wraps up, goofily putting a finger in his ear and mimicking the action of emptying it out. "Now kids, come on up and grab your lots," All Might quickly said, pulling a pair of boxes from out of nowhere. Izuku hesitantly walks up and sticks his hand in the box, grabbing a ball with an uppercase A on it and walking away, searching for who held the other A. That is, until receiving a tap on the shoulder from a familiar blonde boy. "Looks like we're a team, Midoriya." Izuku turns his head around, seeing Ojiro behind him with a grin and the other A ball, before turning around and putting his fist out. "That it does, Ojiro," a gesture the other boy reciprocates. Izuku looks around to see what other teams were made, from some pretty good combos like Momo and Shoji, some okay ones like Kaminari and Ida, and possibly the worst combo possible. That combo consists of poor Kota, the boy as still as a plank of wood while Bakugo continues screaming at him. Izuku could only feel bad for him, and sent him a look that said, "I'm sorry," a look that the boy took in kind. Here is the full list for you lovely readers. A. Midoriya Izuku and Ojiro Mashireo. B. Yayorozu Momo and Shoji Mizo. C. Bakugo Katsuki and Kota Koji. D. Ida Tenya and Kaminari Denki. E. Tokoyami Fumikage and Uraraka Achiko. F. Kirishima Ijiro and Aoyama Yuga. G. Team of 3 Ashido Mina, Kojiro Bando, and Hagakure Toru. H. Sato Rikido and Azui Tsuyu. I. Shiro Hanta and Jiro Kyoka. Izuku looks ahead at All Might, waiting for the announcement of the fights. "Now you Zygotes, the first match will be Team HAS Heroes and Team G as Villains. Match 2 is Team A as Heroes versus Team C as Villains. Match 3 will be Team B as Heroes and Team E as Villains. Match 4 consists of Team F as Heroes versus Team D as Villains. Lastly, the final match pits Team G now as the heroes against Team I as villains. Any questions? No? Good. Team G and H, head to the building. The villain team gets 5 minutes of planning in the building before the hero team may enter. Everyone else, follow me. All Might wraps up his announcement with a smile on his face as he starts walking away, the rest of the class trailing not too far behind. Izuku followed him, not paying too much attention as he pointedly followed the rest of the class, stuck in his thoughts as he realized one thing. I guess my fight with Bakugo is coming sooner than I hoped, oh well. Izuku thankfully got knocked out of his stupor by his partner, not realizing they had already arrived at the observation room, with the first match having already begun. Izuku watches the first match with a serious look on his face, wanting to observe and see what strategies the teams would hold. The villains had a pretty simple plan in place: traps. A multitude of traps, with Bondo and Ashido placing glue and acid on the floor to slow them down, with Hagakure sticking near the heroes for information gathering. This strategy was unfortunately too much for the heroes, with them only reaching the bomb room with 20 seconds to spare from the route they had to take and the three overwhelming the duo, resulting in a win for the villains team. With the battle over, the groups went over to one another and gave each other a handshake and a good match. The two teams walk in a few minutes later, the quintet getting an applause from most of the class on a good match, with All Might asking who the class thought the MVP was. This was answered rather quickly by Momo, with her going into a mini-speech about why Hagakure deserved it, with her reconnaissance work being vital during the match. All Might's sweat dropped a tad internally, having thought the same thing but with a simpler explanation, before speaking back up with a quick, "Good job young Yaoyorozu. I couldn't have said it better myself, ha 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 ha." After this, All Might told the two teams going next to go to the building and prepare themselves. Izuku and Ojiro heard this and started walking over to the guide robot, ready to be guided to the building. Izuku turns to his right, seeing Bakugo giving him a nasty glare and swiping a line on his neck before looking back forward, Koda giving Izuku an apologetic look. Izuku made a point to ignore the gesture, turning to his partner and decided to start planning early while they walked. A few minutes later, outside the building. Izuku is sitting down, pleasantly waiting for the match to start. Him and Ojiro already deduced a good plan to get a quick win. Izuku pointed out the danger Bakugo posed, basing this off of his high intelligence and fighting ability. Ojiro asked if he had any ideas, to which Izuku gave his teammate the widest Cheshire grin imaginable, whispering the full plan into Ojiro's ear. Ojiro's smile grew wider and wider as the explanation went on, with it being nearly as wide as Izuku's was by the end of the plan. The boy agreed quickly to Izuku's scheme, with him starting to prepare himself for his part. The tailed boy was thankful at this moment for having a really good memory about move-in day. The two hear All Might scream up "begin" in their ears, the duet nodding to each other and getting in position, quickly doing the fusion technique correctly. A beam of light blocked their view for a moment, before the light dimmed and the fusion appeared. The fusion had lime green hair styled in a messy mullet, a green vest with a white outline, a pair of pure white pants, a black belt, and white and green boots. The fusion also had a forked tail with the same color hair on the end. The fusion got right to work, activating Night Hunter for a brief moment to locate their opponents before deactivating it after a minute, then activating One for All's innate stockpiling at 60% and rushing in, ready to make this fight a quick one. The fusion ran in, intercepting Bakugo almost right away. Bakugo was extremely confused for a moment at who this was and paused his movement. This ended up being an error, the fusion quickly putting a hand on the blonde bomber's neck, using energy transfer to overload his senses, and giving him a quick chop to the back of the neck that knocked him out. The fusion quickly tied the boy up, hearing All Might scream, "Young Bakugo has been eliminated." Satisfied, the combo can be seen rushing upstairs to where they sensed Koda was. The fusion ran up the stairs to the 4th floor where they had sensed Koda, running through the doorway and touching the bomb before Koda could do anything. With All Might announcing the match's conclusion, the fusion calmed down a little before walking up to the rock-headed boy. "Sorry about that, Koda, but we wanted this to be quick. Before you ask, I'm a fusion of Midoriya and Ojiro. Just call us Midojiro." Midojiro wrapped up their statement with them extending their hand out for Koda to shake, something that the boy reciprocated. What they didn't notice, however, was who could be seen at the doorway, one hand on his gauntlet and ready to pull it. "FDMNIT, Deku, you used a cheap trick to try and avoid our fight? How about you try and ignore this? You know how my quirk works, with my sweat being like nitroglycerin to make explosions. You see these gauntlets, right? Well, guess what they do?" Bakugo screamed out with a crazy look on his face. All Might was right on it, screaming out a quick "Don't, young Bakugo, the exercise is over already and that can kill them. Do it and you will be in massive trouble, understood?" This warning, unfortunately, fell on deaf ears, with Bakugo turning his aim to Koda. If YA wanna save him Deku, then go for it. It's you or him and I don't give a shit about what happens. Midoriya quickly ran in front of Koda, pushing him out of the way and attempting to tank the massive explosion. The fusion took the brunt of the damage. When the smoke cleared, those in the observation room could see All Might holding Bakugo up by the gauntlet, with a scared Koda sitting on his butt after being pushed by the fusion. The fusion itself though? Well, Ojiro and Izuku were once again separate. The two of them were knocked out cold, laying on the ground with severe burns on both of their bodies. All Might looked livid, giving the blonde bomber a nasty glare. I will be taking you to the president's office after the other matches wrap up, where we will discuss your punishment. For now though? All Might answered his own question by breaking the boy's gauntlets and knocking him out. Momo can be seen in the observation room, very clearly upset at the events that just unfolded as an equally upset Kyoka ran up to her and started rubbing circles on her back to try and calm her down. The rest of the class can be seen visibly shaken as medical bots come to take the two injured boys. Koda asked All Might if he can go with them, getting a nod and trailing behind the duo. This was not how Class 1A expected battle training to go, and now they had two severely injured classmates.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification, so when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.